Good evening. My name is Leah Cruzy. I am the chair of the DC Public Charter School Board. Thank you for joining us this evening. I would like to welcome my fellow board members and colleagues, including Vice Chair Jim Sandman, Secretary Shakora Adamafanian, Treasurer Chantel Wright, Carissa Stanley Beatty, and Dwight Davis. Nick Rodriguez is unable to join us this evening, but he has provided a proxy vote. There are several things on this evening's board agenda, two of which I would like to highlight. First, we will have a roundtable to discuss truancy, which our Executive Director, Dr. Michelle Walker-Davis, will describe in further detail in a moment. We will have discussions on various topics this school year. Tonight is the first. School begins today for many DC students, and many more will begin over the next week and after Labor Day. So this topic is timely as school communities grapple with strategies to maximize valuable instructional time for students. And second, we will follow up on last week's special board meeting where we heard public comment from the community, from Eagle Academy Public Charter School, and from Friendship Public Charter School. Since then, we have received quite a few written comments, which we deeply value, and I know each board member has considered as we consider the vote before us. This evening, the action item concerning Eagle Academy Public Charter School will not be an opportunity for public comment. Rather, the agenda item will be a vote on Friendship's proposed amendment to acquire Eagle Academy Public Charter School. I'll have more public comments, I'll have more comments throughout the meeting, but for now, I will turn it over to Dr. Walker-Davis.
Thank you, Chair Cruzy. Chair Cruzy mentioned our roundtable on truancy, which we are holding for 3 reasons. First, we want to start the school year on a good foot. That's why we want to prioritize attendance and truancy early in the school year, because we know that a student not in school is not getting access to the coursework needed to advance to the next grade or class. Second, we have a policy, the attendance and truancy policy, through which we monitor attendance and truancy data for every LEA. The policy establishes the truancy rate thresholds at which schools may be subject to a notice of concern. The thresholds are differentiated by pre-K to 8 schools, high schools, and schools eligible for the Alternative Accountability Framework. This allows both the schools and DC PCSB to have an early alert to determine when an intervention is needed. Third, truancy and attendance are not one school's or agency's problem. Rather, quite a few city partners, including the Deputy Mayor for Education, OSSI, Court Social Services, CFSA, and the Attorney General's Office, and more, have a role in the issue and responsibility to support our young people. In addition, a significant number of nonprofits also have a critical role in supporting students in schools with identifying the root causes and sometimes the systemic issues that prevent students from getting to school at all or on time. As you know, absenteeism and truancy are not unique to Washington, D.C. School districts across the country are focusing on this issue. Experts such as Dr. Robert Belfans of Johns Hopkins University refers to this as a challenging problem that does not have one answer. And Liz Cohen of Future Ed at Georgetown University reminds us that it is critical to understand that this relationship between students and school works in 2 directions. She says, we want the student to come to school, and the school needs to provide something to keep that student in school. We need to give them reasons to stay in the building once we've engaged in the interventions to get them back. The ongoing work to improve academic rigor and build additional pathways, especially in high school, we see as part of the work to reduce chronic absenteeism. These are important thoughts, and I know you will hear more about this subject during our roundtable, which Kirsten James will introduce, and during which 2 of our LEAs will speak. There is much more on this month's board meeting agenda. We have 3 items on the public comment agenda before the board: a vote on Friendship Public Charter School's request to acquire Eagle Academy Public Charter School, and we will also vote on Maya Angelou Public Charter School's request to amend its mission and expand the criteria used for virtual programming. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Cruzy.
Thank you, Dr. Walker-Davis. At the beginning of every board meeting, the DC Public Charter School Board hears public testimony related to items on the agenda and listens for testimony for topics not related to any agenda items. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak, and if you need to make a few additional points, please email your testimony for us to read to public.comment@dcpcsb.org. Public officials who sign up to testify will be allowed to speak for up to 5 minutes. The hand-raising feature has been disabled. As a reminder, all written public comment is available to the public on our website. If you would like to register to provide live testimony or submit a written comment to the board, you can find all testimony registration and submission information on our website under the Public Comment tab at dcpcsb.org. You can also submit your comments to public.comment@dcpcsb.org or call our public comments line to leave a voicemail testimony at 202-328-2660 and select option 2. As we move through each speaker, Aisha and Courtney, who are our Zoom hosts this evening, will promote each speaker from the attendee pool and then unmute individuals for speaking. So we'll begin to hear from the 4 individuals who signed up to speak this evening. Each, again, will be given 2 minutes to speak. To begin, we'll begin with Karina Flores. Welcome, Karina.
Hi, Leah. It's Aisha. We actually have 5 speakers. I'm sorry for the typo in your memo.
Okay, all right. Wonderful.
I cannot seem to see any of those 5 people in our attendee pool. I'm looking in the pool. I don't see any of the speakers' names in the pool at this time.
All right. Well, as teachers are beginning the school year and getting used to those moments of silence, we are all going to have a moment of silence here while we give our public commenters a moment to perhaps catch up. And if it helps, I'm going to name the 5 public commenters in case hearing their names may help, or if anyone who is a part of their community may be able to alert them and hears their name, that may also help. We begin with Karina Flores. We have Kyle Lorenz, Platika Taylor, Claudette Busong, and Tammy Adams. And Aisha, I suppose as soon as any one of them show up in the attendee pool, we can elevate them, and then we'll make sure each person has their chance as they show up.
That's fine. I still don't see any one of them in the pool. Just
Aisha, I'll give it about 30 more seconds. And then if no one shows up by then, I'm going to request that we come back to public comment after we do the roundtable. Is it possible that anyone is endeavoring to get in that is not able to?
I usually get an email if someone is having issues, and I just checked. I didn't see anything.
Okay. Is there an email address you would direct folks to if they are trying to get in and they haven't known who to email?
Sure. They should email public dot comment at DCPCSB, the acronym for DC Public School Board .org. Public dot comment at DCPCSB.org.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to make sure that we come back to public comment. We are going to proceed to the truancy roundtable now. And after that concludes, we're going to come back to public comment. And I trust that by then, if anyone who's having difficulty getting in, they will contact the public.comment@dcpcsb.org email address.
Found one. Tammy Adams, I'm getting ready to promote you.
Okay.
Tammy, you declined my promotion. Don't, girl. Do you want to hear what you have to say? I'm gonna try again. She declined again. I'm gonna allow you to speak. Maybe you don't want to be on camera. That's fine. I'm gonna allow you to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Welcome.
My apologies. I'm not sure what's going on why I declined it. My name is Tammy Adams, and I'm just one of the parents of Eagle. And I sent the email over, and I just wanted you guys to just really know how super important it is that the school stays open. The way the partner care, the way that those teachers show up for those students each and every day with the mental health and different IEPs and things of that nature, being able to show up and help them, specifically Miss Lockett, Miss Salter, Miss Shawnita, Miss Burns. My daughter has been going there since pre-K, and she went all the way through, and her social skills, how she's academically excelling, how she would cry for math, and Miss Harrington will pull her out every single day. Every morning, Miss Harrington will pull her and work with her for 30 to 45 minutes every day. To now, my daughter's excelling in math. She loves math. She's looking for Miss Harrington instead of, running away from Miss Harrington. She's excited to do her homework. The way that they take care of those students, the students that are not eating, how they make sure that they have a meal, and the extra food, they are able to sit them in the laundry room, sit them in the cafeteria and make sure that they eat and they have something extra on their stomachs before they go out there. The activities, my favorite was the bullying convention that they had back last year, September, October, where they talked to us about bullying and the things that they have in place for bullying and how it was zero tolerance and what to do, the chain of command around bullying and how we can support and be better as a community. I really, really, really love the school and love the way they show up for these children. Not only mine, every single child, the way they show up, the way they're intentional, the partner care, like I've never seen nothing like that. I've been out of school 25 years. I haven't seen that since I was in school, since I was in elementary school, junior high school, growing up. And I just think it's super important to keep them in place so they continue to grow and just have a genuine care about these children. It takes a community, and that's what Eagle is. They're a community. The way they work together, the way they show up for one another. It brings tears to my eyes, but I'm super emotional because they're just that awesome. Like, I'm one of them parents. I'm really, really involved with everything. But just to see them just as involved and wanna, meet me halfway just brings so much joy to my heart. And that's all I got.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Thank you for sharing that with us.
No problem.
And for bearing with us on the technology. Aisha, do we have any other public commenters who are here to share?
I didn't see anyone else on the list.
Okay, then let's proceed to the to the Truancy roundtable and keep an eye out for others who may email you in the meantime. So for that, I would like to yield the floor to Kirsten Floyd, Director of Data and Accountability. Welcome, Kirsten, to introduce the first topic.
Thank you, Chair Cruzy. Good evening, Dr. Walker-Davis and board members. Thank you for providing this space for us to discuss such an important topic, especially as we begin a new school year. I will be joined by representatives from DC Scholars Public Charter School and Meridian Public Charter School. Give me 1 second. Aisha, can you pull up the deck, or if you want me to, I can.
If you don't mind, Probably be in a better space to do it.
I apologize for the delay. I'm trying to share my screen. Here we go. Okay, can everyone see? Yes, okay, great. So I want to kind of ground everyone in three key terms when we're talking about measuring attendance. The first is in-seat attendance, which I'm sure you've heard, also known as ISA, is the percentage of the cumulative sum of days, instructional days, on which enrolled students are present. So in-seat attendance is a measure of days present. Truancy is the accrual of at least 10 full-day unexcused absences during a school year, and a school's truancy rate refers to the percentage of students who have met that truancy marker of 10 full-day unexcused absences. And chronic absenteeism is the incidence of students missing more than 10%, of school days, including excused, unexcused, partial, and full-day absences. One thing to note about chronic absenteeism is that it is a dynamic measure, so it is ever-changing based on the relationship between or the changing proportion of absences relative to instructional days. So students can move in and out of chronic absenteeism throughout the year. Truancy counts only unexcused absences, emphasizes compliance with school rules and the law, and relies on legal and administrative solutions, while chronic absence counts all and any type of absences, emphasizes the academic impact of missed days, and uses community-based strategies to make improvements. I think I would guess that a lot of the emphasis on chronic absenteeism recently is because of the emphasis on academic impact of missed days, because it includes partial absences, excused and unexcused absences, as well as those attributed to things like suspension. So anytime a student is missing instructional time, it is considered in chronic absenteeism. As Dr. Walker-Davis said, this is not a DC issue. Nationally, our chronic absenteeism rate hovered around 15% prior to 2018, or in 2018 and prior to that. And in 2022, which is the most recent national data that we have on chronic absenteeism, it went up as high as 28% nationally. The high-level takeaways here are that historically low achieving districts, high poverty districts, and high minority districts were experienced the highest increases in chronic absenteeism as a result of the pandemic. Locally and statewide, OSSE released a mid-year attendance brief back in this spring, and it compared chronic absenteeism and chronic truancy rates for the state in 23-24 from the beginning of the year through March 1st, compared to the same period of time in 22-23. And what you'll see here is that chronic absenteeism and chronic truancy both decreased in year over year. I will say that chronic absenteeism is still at 35.3%, is still about 5 percentage points higher than it was in school year 2018-19. On the other hand, chronic truancy is actually considerably less than it was in 2018-19. At that time, it was around 29.9%. These charts show that although there is a wide variance in actual chronic absenteeism rates across all grade bands and across student groups, they all experienced the same declines from 22-23 to 23-24. I will say the standouts for significantly high percentages of a chronic absenteeism are students in 9th through 12th grade, economically disadvantaged students, students with disabilities, and Black students. Again, we see this trend of our rates declining from 22-23 to 23-24. But this chart shows that public charter schools maintain higher chronic absenteeism rates and chronic truancy rates over DCPS in both school year 22-23 and 23-24. This chart shows a comparison of PARC from school year 22-23, PARC performance by levels 1 through 5, of students who are truant and students who are not truant. So orange is truant and blue is not truant. And what you can see is that truant students consistently score lower on the state assessment in both ELA and math than their non-truant peers. You'll also see that for ELA, there are roughly the percentage of not truant students who are proficient, level 4 or 5, is about double that of the non-truant students. Or I might have said that backwards. The percentage of students who are not truant and proficient is about double that of their truant peers. And for math, it's more than 3 times the amount. So more than 3 times the percentage of students who are truant, their non-truant peers are proficient in math. So this is just a visual representation of the academic impact. Now, this is not to say that truancy or attendance is the only reason these students are performing in the way that they are, but it is to say that there is a significant relationship between academic outcomes and attendance. We've also included this box and whisker chart about NWEA map growth, and it compares truant students to their non-truant peers, and they consider truant students consistently experience lower growth on MAP than their non-truant peers. So generally speaking, the conditional growth percentile is lower, or the median conditional growth percentile is lower for students who are truant than it is for their non-truant peers. Aisha, if you could promote our friends from DC Scholars.
Sure. I didn't get a list of those names. If you could give me the names, I can promote them. I see one, Leangelo. Can promote Leangelo. I'm promoting Leangelo now.
Hello, good evening.
Thank you so much for joining us. Leangela is going to share with us some perspectives from the school, highlights, bright spots around attendance, and then some of the strategies that his school has implemented in order to improve attendance outcomes.
Thank you. So for us as a school community, after COVID, after school year 21-22, we had significant challenges with scholars returning to the building post-COVID, and moving into school year 22-23 and 23-24. That's been one of the things that we wanted to challenge the most. So we're located in Ward 7. As you may know, we're a single site LEA. We have about 495 students, and we're from pre-K 3 through 8th grade. Our school is focused on, we were here a few months ago, and we actually redesigned our mission as we've been doing a rebrand, and moving into this school year. We're focusing on our expeditionary learning program, EL, for our ELA curriculum, increasing athletics and extracurricular activities, and then our before and after care program as well in response to family feedback, and making sure that we're like a school of choice for Ward 7. In terms of data from last school year, so our chronic absenteeism was at 54.3%, which was a 10% decline from school year 22-23 and a 20% decline from school year 21-22. We saw a significant decrease in pre-K 4, first and second grade, 6th and 8th grade. As you can see by the chart here, for our 8th graders, we were able to decrease it by almost half, from that 62% to about 38%. We focus heavily on our early grades to increase family investment and the importance of scholars attending school daily. With ECE, pre-K 3 and pre-K 4, a lot of our families still are getting out of the mindset of this being not daycare and actually school and attending every day. So some of those things directly impact kindergarten student attendance, especially if scholars are transitioning with us from ECE, and making sure that we put supportive measures in place. And also just being consistent about our 8th grade graduation requirements. I think that's another reason that we saw a significant change in 8th grade attendance and having student investment and buy-in for scholars in their last year of programming at DC Scholars. In terms of truancy, so school year 21-22 at 81%, and reducing that by 20%, getting down to 60%. Of course, not where we want to be, but continuing to make significant decrease. Same thing in terms of truancy. Once we get to kindergarten, first and second grade, or being able to decrease the truancy rates in 2nd through 8th grade, and working now on K1. Again, we've noticed that our younger scholars are the ones that we've had to pay closer attention to of families bringing them to school, versus where traditionally it was in our middle school grades, but they are more responsible for themselves getting to school. So trying to ensure that we're helping families with transportation issues, making sure they're getting scholars to school on time, or sometimes our older siblings are actually responsible for bringing their younger siblings to school. We saw a significant decrease in 5th and 8th grade again for student attendance, and we're also connecting some of those things to relationships that teachers have with families and students as well, and the impact that that has on students wanting to attend school. So this year we're focusing on K1 and trying to ensure that we're instilling strong habits from pre-K 3 and pre-K 4. Some interventions that we've put in place from school year 21-22. One major challenge we initially had as a school, we used eSchool Plus, and there were a lot of challenges with eSchool connecting to our data system. So then moving to PowerSchool, and last school year, we actually implemented Dean's List, which provided us with new ways to look at data, interventions for families, being able to find trends across student attendance, trends across families, which days were the most poorly attended, which days we had the strongest attendance. That also led to a change in our school schedule for this upcoming year of moving our early release day from Wednesday to Friday, as we noticed that we were having a significant drop in attendance on Wednesdays and Fridays. So we had meetings with families to understand some of those challenges. So we made a switch to our early release day, which we're hoping will allow us to have stronger attendance this school year. And that was also through the use of Dean's List. It also allowed us to make robocalls, emails, text messages, as ways of keeping families informed and sending home weekly reports related to attendance. Additionally, we wanted to build stronger relationships with our families. So I participated in an opportunity to have Flamboyant Foundation come join as a partnership with our school, so that we can work on reinvesting families in homeschool partnership, supporting, they provide us with training, tools, resources, home visits, so that we can have more contact with our families, as well as building out the partnership with another community partner, Better Mornings, who also works with us to help improve student attendance. And then in strategy number 3, just targeted family intervention and resource sharing. So if we notice that there were challenges across students that belong to one family, how could we support that family more? As well as working with Everyday Labs from OSSI in terms of communication, resource sharing as well, and being able to meet with our families in person. In middle school, we took the opportunity to actually meet with students that were truant and try to get a better understanding of challenges they have with coming to school. That led to us building some attendance contracts with the student versus with the parent, and built in an incentive program for the student attending. And actually, we saw results there of the older student that was responsible for bringing the younger siblings, of getting everyone involved in coming to school, which significantly increased our middle school attendance as well.
Thank you so much, Angelo. Can you stay on? We're going to have Meridian present, and then we're going to have the board ask y'all some questions.
No problem.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We're looking for our Meridian representatives. If you're out there, Aisha's looking for you.
It looks like School Leader McCray did not make it to the meeting, so let's move forward with questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you, D'Angelo, for your presentation. I'm sorry that we won't be able to hear from Meridian tonight, but we appreciate all that you're doing, and I appreciate the presentation this evening, Kirsten, on giving us some guidance on how to think about this, and also on what some of the historical trends have been. Board members, I'd like to open it up to everybody, and perhaps as you get started, I'm going to start with a question for you, Kirsten, and then board members, please let me know as you have questions. Can you explain for us what PCSB's role is as the authorizer for monitoring attendance?
So we, as the authorizer, have the attendance and truancy policy. There are no named requirements for us as the authorizer, like an SRA, for us to monitor attendance, but we have implemented this policy because we know that attendance is an important component of student, or has a significant impact on student outcomes or student academic outcomes and school quality. So in addition to the attendance and truancy policy, we also have included attendance measures in our Aspire system. So it is something that we also have included there to show that it is a valuable component of what we believe to be a school's overall quality. And the attendance and truancy policy, as Dr. Walker Davis mentioned, sets up a system for us to monitor attendance and truancy month to month during the school year. And once schools meet a particular threshold, they can be subject to a notice of concern, which basically says that we are paying attention. We see that there is this particular measure that is has exceeded what we see to be a reasonable threshold, and our board votes to issue a notice of concern. The school has to improve in that area, or in ISA and or truancy for those students who are truant, improve in ISA for the students who are truant, and or reduce their truancy rate in order to have the notice of concern lifted. One of the reasons that I had the DC Scholars team join us is not because they have no attendance issues. It's because they actually have had this challenge and are doing a really great job of addressing it and decreasing those attendance outcomes in the way of absenteeism and truancy. And they have shown year over year that though it continues to be a challenge, they are up for it and continue to show real improvements in the numbers themselves. Like we always know that there's work being done behind the scenes, but their actual outcomes are changing. And that's why we invited them to be part of this conversation, because as we are continuing to monitor attendance and truancy outcomes, there are schools that stand out for different reasons. And, there are some schools that don't have as many attendance challenges as others. But as I said, with the data from the national level, high poverty, high minority, and consistently lower achieving schools all struggle the most nationally with this issue. And so I think it is important for us to highlight and draw attention to people that are not shying away from the problem, but are really kind of attacking it, even when they're still having challenges with it. And so I felt like that was one of the things that stood out about DC Scholars, was not that they were not a school that was showing up on a list or, exceeding the threshold in some way, but that every time we look at their data year to year, it's getting better.
Thank you for that. And it sounds like by us drawing some attention to it, LEA boards who may or may not be watching this evening can think of it as something to monitor at their school level as well. Vice Chair Sandman, I believe you have a question.
Yes, I have two brief questions. First, how do the DC Scholars numbers for school year 23-24 compare to the numbers for school year 18-19?
For school year 18-19, I would need to pull that data. Let's see, 1 second.
Understanding it may take you a second to pull up the specifics.
You can provide it to us later if that would be easier for you. You don't need to do it right now. My second question picks up on something that Dr. Walker Davis said in introducing the roundtable about the involvement of other DC government agencies in addressing this issue. Do you ever reach out to other DC government agencies to get supportive services where you think that that might be helpful in addressing an underlying situation that can affect attendance?
Yes, I know that this past or this upcoming school year, we were at the school safety meeting that was recently held by the mayor in, I believe, April or May. And so the mayor took an opportunity to discuss how CFSA and other DC entities will be supporting schools with attendance and accountability for this upcoming year. Once our students hit the truancy rate of 10 days, of course, we have to make, as required, the CFSA referral. Honestly, sometimes there's a gap between what happens with the CFSA referral and then the next steps that can happen with the school. So we may have made the referral, completed the home visit, and sometimes we do see improvement from families after the CFSA referral, but there are other times where the case is either closed or dismissed and there's no follow-up, and then we're continuing and the families still continue to accumulate absences. So we are hoping that like in that connection and that bridge this upcoming year, I believe there's the middle piece added now of CFSA, and after you make the referral, if a family is still showing up as truant, the next steps that we'll be taking by IC and the government to just kind of intervene and support schools from there. I think that can be another major difference in just making sure that families understand the importance and like the accountability of it while also receiving support from the school. Another strategy, we've reached out to School Connect because a lot of our families have expressed sometimes having concerns with transportation. And I know right now that that's now a heavy lift from School Connect. I think a lot of schools are reaching out to them. And so there's a wait list. So a lot of our families have been advocating for how DC scholars can get more support there as well. So that's another avenue that we've explored of just trying to make sure that we're supporting families as they need and express the concerns to us.
Thank you very much.
Board Member Davis.
Yes, good evening. And thank you for leaning into this very important topic. So my question had to do with the, you said that you all have been looking at the data, and I'm just interested to know, were there any interesting findings in the data? Were there, you talked about the Wednesday, Friday drop off, but when you look at the data, you think about different days, like different instances, like weather, right? Were there things that you learned about the community that could, better help you all help the community?
Great question. When we had an opportunity, we work with EdOps as well. They share a weekly attendance dashboard with us, and that allows us to drill down in the day of the week. It allows us to also look year over year at certain holidays or right before a holiday, which has helped us design our school calendar. So we've used a lot of that information. So we've noticed that the day or 2 days before a long break, we have a significant drop in attendance. So in some ways, we've tried to increase attendance on those days by engaging students or families. That may be when we implement the Spirit Week or different things like that to keep students engaged all the way up until the break. We've noticed that on, for example, right before Thanksgiving, that Monday and Tuesday, we have a significant drop in attendance right up leading to the day before Thanksgiving and into the Thanksgiving break. So we were able to make strategic decisions in our school calendar and trade-offs of not having school on that Monday and Tuesday because there was such a significant decline, and making up for those days in other spaces in our school calendar. We've also noticed that there are some days where I believe in school year 22, 23 or 21, 22, in October, or November, there was a time where it was Election Day, Veterans Day, and then we were off like 2 days back to back, and then Thanksgiving break. And those gaps for families where if you came to school or you were out on Monday, you came on Tuesday, our early release day was on Wednesday, you came back to school on Thursday, and a holiday fell on that Friday. students didn't come the entire week. So that allowed us to make strategic decisions as well about building out our school calendar for the following year, of just keeping those things in mind, of where we place professional development days, family conference days, and how we build our schedule leading up to longer breaks.
Thank you. Board members, Secretary Adamathanian, and next will be Treasurer Wright, and then after that, Carissa.
Awesome. I have one request and then one question. First, the request would be if we could bring Meridian back to present at a future meeting about this very important issue, I would really appreciate it. And that request is out to the staff if we can make that happen. Secondly, and I just want to again commend you and can you pronounce your last name again? I don't want to get it somebody who has their name
no problem.
mispronounced all the time.
Imperator.
Say it again.
Imperator.
Imperator. I just want to commend you and your team, Mr. Imperator, for the level of work that you all are doing to address it. I'm remembering my former school leader days. Get the babies in the doors, all kind of things. Every dog and pony you can pull out. So kudos to you all for digging in there. My one question for you is how are you all engaging your board in this work? And how are they both supporting you all and holding you all accountable to the goals that you're setting?
Yes. So in terms of accountability, we meet with our academic committee of our board on a monthly basis. And a large portion of that conversation before we get to the academics is around attendance. So we know that we can't do any of the academic work if we don't have students in the building. So we have I mentioned that we work with EdOps on that weekly attendance dashboard. We also send a monthly attendance report to our board to identify wins, challenges, and action steps that we're taking each month to support our attendance work and highlight months where we're doing really well and months where we have challenges for our overall attendance goals. They also support with setting our school goals as well, aligned to now the Aspire framework and holding us accountable, myself and our head of school as well, to that data. In terms of the second part to the question, in terms of, sorry, you asked about the accountability and.
Yes, the accountability. How is your board holding you all accountable, and what supports are they offering to leaders? Yeah.
Yep. In terms of the supports, mainly the things around that I mentioned earlier around the school calendar and working with us in terms of flexibility of things that we are recognizing as like challenges for our families and supporting us in ways of providing either recommendations, support, options, considerations, along with those accountability measures. So, for example, in terms of the school calendar, once we submit it to the board, they begin to review it and ask questions or offer support of, have you considered this? Have you thought about like if families have this understanding around attendance, truancy, chronic absenteeism, and we have 2 family members that serve on our board as well. So we're asking those participants, like for families, what's your understanding of bringing your scholar to school every day? Like what challenges are you even experiencing as the parent board member that maybe we're not hearing from our families? So there's a variety of ways that they engage in the work and engage us in continuing to hold us accountable to those goals.
Cruzy, I know you were calling on me next, but I also see Meridian here. So did you want to move in that level first? Because my question can go to either school leader.
Yes, I appreciate that. Mr. McCray, I think we'd all benefit from hearing from you as well. Thank you for joining us. And I know that we've had some technology challenges for everybody tonight, so appreciate you joining.
Of course. Thank you, Chair Cruzy, and I apologize for the delay, but I'm glad to be here tonight. I think I shared my slides with Kirsten. Okay, great.
Chair Cruzy, this is Board Member Beatty. While we're waiting for the slides, my question actually was for DC Scholars. Is it okay if I ask him that while we're waiting? Thank you. So I wanted to thank you for sharing with us this afternoon, and also for being so thoughtful about this particular issue. I was intrigued about one of the tools that you mentioned in terms of the student survey, and how it seems as though students really embrace that and you found that to be impactful. Can you talk to us just a little bit about what you may have heard from students about the survey, how you came up with that tool? And how, quite frankly, how you think that was something that worked. Did the students talk about it at home, or did they really just sort of find the responsibility in themselves to be mindful of it? I'm just curious to hear more about that tool.
Yes, absolutely. So I will definitely give credit where credit is due. Our dean of middle school culture is all locked into our middle school students, and they are heavily invested in her. And so they share a lot of their opinions, thoughts, feelings. You know, one day we were walking in the hallway and they said, well, if we could wear hoodies to school, we come to school every day. So I said, oh, well, it's no problem in designing a hoodie. We can make that happen. Like, we can figure that part out for you. You want to wear a hoodie? We can let you wear a hoodie. So we implemented hoodie days that allow us to also just have homeroom challenges. So the homeroom with the highest attendance at the end of the week earned like Hoodie Friday, which was just a big thing as well. Didn't cost us any money. It allowed them to do one of the things. And surprisingly, everyone showed up to school when they got to wear the hoodie. So it was just listening to students as well. And in designing that student survey, we asked them, like, what's the top 3 things that like you would want if your homeroom had 90% or above. And we also asked them, like, what are the top 3 challenges with coming to school? Just being transparent, some of the scholars named transportation related to distance, which resulted in having another conversation because maybe we got some information that we had to then do some other next steps around. Some families had moved based on the pandemic and was no longer like as close to the school as they were before. The neighborhood is changing, so that has caused some families to have to move out of the Ward 7 area and into other areas. So some of the students were naming some of those barriers as well. One student, she wasn't attending school. She was missing at least 3 to 4 days a week. We put an incentive in place where we said we will give you a $40 gift card if you make it to school every single day. I took $40 out. Here you go. She actually came to school 4 months in a row, didn't miss a single day. So it was just also just getting an understanding, especially in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, of the students that are kind of like responsible for getting themselves to school. Not to say that we could give $40 gift cards to everyone, but like just listening to what the kids are saying, just listening to what the kids are saying and like following up on what will get them in the building as well. And once they see us doing that, then they get another level of investment because they realize we are invested in getting them to school and we believe in getting them there by any means. So that was just a helpful thing that came out one day as we were drilling down into the attendance and just kind of going student by student.
Good for you. Ownership is always a critical component of getting anybody to buy into a system. So good for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you again for sharing.
No problem. Just to answer that earlier question, our in-seat attendance for school year 18-19 was 92%. At that time, we didn't have a chronic absenteeism rate, but we had the in-seat attendance rate of 92%. Right now, we are about in-seat attendance around 88 to 90% is like our average for each month.
Thank you. Matt, it's on you. Thank you so much for joining.
All right. Good evening again, everybody. It's good to see everybody. And again, apologize for my tardiness. Just a little bit of information on Meridian before we start. And I appreciate my colleague sharing the school year 18-19 attendance for his LEA. I think that it's important information too that I'll share here. As you all know, we are Ward 1. We have 2 campuses in Columbia Heights and off U Street. Last year, our audited enrollment was 621 students. Approximately 30% of our students are emerging multilingual learners. About 65% qualify for the economically disadvantaged designation. Another important thing to know about our student population is, unlike many LEAs and certainly many schools in DCPS, we serve students from all 8 wards. So we have students that come to us every day from down in Ward 7 and 8. We have students that come from Wards 5 and 6, even Ward 3. But about half of our students come from within about a mile of one of our 2 campuses. And of course, we are a pre-K 3 through 8th grade. Couple of program characteristics just to bounce back to that. We are an EL Education Partner School. We're the first EL Education Partner School in the city to not be founded as an EL Education Partner School. We're 3 years into that journey in partnership with EL Education, and we are a comprehensive literacy support designee through the state literacy grant, which funds a good number of our programs at each campus. So our current data around absenteeism, this last year, our in-seat attendance wrapped up at 84.7. That was an increase from school year 23. So we went up just over a percentage point. Chronic absenteeism also improved, dropped to 52.3%, a 6.5% decrease from the previous school year. Angelo mentioned his 18-19 rate. Like him, we don't have our chronic absenteeism from that year. But prior to the pandemic, when we all closed down on March 16th, our in-seat attendance that year in school year 19-20 was 93.8%. So almost a 10% drop from before the pandemic to after the pandemic. And by and large, we did not have significant truancy issues either. Couple of things that we see in this data. By and large, our pre-K in-seat attendance is quite a bit lower than our overall in-seat attendance. Right around the low 70s. If you could jump back one slide for me just for a second. There we go. And then one other thing that we notice in sharing the data out with our families is that oftentimes we see that our families don't always realize how much school their kids miss compared to their classmates. So sometimes it's a conversation of, well, yeah, I know they're missing a lot of school, but a lot of their classmates are probably missing about the same amount. And in some cases that is true, in some cases it's not. But oftentimes, relative to peers, families aren't always aware of that data for their own student. Next slide. And then truancy grew about 10% from January to June 2024, so much, much slower than the rate from the beginning of the year till January. We ended the year at about a 35% truancy rate. One of the things that we noticed was that the biggest spike came from November to January. One of the things that we still hear from a lot of our families is that COVID is still a fear. Whether or not it's spreading, I think we've all probably felt over the last couple of months. We've had friends, colleagues, family members spike with COVID. Back in the middle of our academic year, children would have a runny nose or they might have a mild fever, and parents oftentimes kept them home for a number of days and would communicate back to us, I was just worried that they have COVID. I didn't get them tested, but it looked close enough to COVID. I just decided to keep them home just to be safe. Even if it was 3 or 5 days, I just wanted to be 100% sure that they weren't sicker than they looked. On the bright spot area, I mentioned this in the interventions as well, but one thing that I want to highlight about in-seat attendance and truancy is the amazing efforts of our 5th grade team over the last couple of years. Our 5th grade team does an extraordinary job of communicating the need to be in school with our parents. And what we're finding in a lot of our interventions and what's working is that teachers are often the best conduit for communicating with families around the importance of being in school. We would see in-seat attendance rates jump for the same population of students by 10-15% when they move from 4th grade to 5th grade, when all that's really changed about the student group is the teachers that they had. Sometimes those same students that come to school in 5th grade, we saw them come to a little less school in 6th grade. So we really think that teachers are a big lever for driving attendance improvement at Meridian. And just a couple of interventions that we've tried. I'm happy to answer questions about these, but there are many, many, many interventions that we've worked on. I'll start with strategy number 2 because that drives home what I was saying. The reasons for absence are often extremely idiosyncratic. There's rarely that we found a sweeping intervention that we can put out that's going to bring everybody back to school. With the families where we've really made traction, it's communicating with the family, it's trying to figure out what the barrier to positive attendance is, and then addressing that barrier. If it's, well, my kids don't have clean uniforms, we have washer dryers in both of our campuses, we offer to help them with laundry for free. They can come in and take care of the laundry for themselves and their entire household. That eliminates that barrier. Sometimes it's transportation. We need to work with them on Metro passes and Kid Ride Free cards. We also implemented a couple of years ago a shuttle that runs between our middle school and our elementary school campus. It also stops at the Columbia Heights Metro. So now our kids just need to make it to the Columbia Heights Metro on the Green Line. Relatively easy for most of them based on our living patterns in the city. And then we pick them up with the shuttle and then take them to either the elementary school or the middle school as appropriate. And then at the end of the day, since we have many families that have children at both of our campuses, we'll pick them up at one campus, take them to the other campus, and make it that much easier for families to get both of their kids at the end of the day, or for them to walk home with the supervision of an older sibling. I mentioned a little bit of strategy 1. We do work with our teachers consistently. We have a partnership with Flamboyant that's going into its 2nd year now to build positive relationships with families, but then to also communicate back to us about the reasons for absences. While we think that we could be doing a lot better around in-seat attendance and bringing the kids into school, what we've also found is sometimes parents, and I say this as a parent of a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old myself, I just forget to communicate that they were sick that day. Things come up, you get a little bit busy. I might be likely to text the teacher though that my son isn't going to be in school today. So we've been working with teachers to make sure that the line of communication back to us about the reasons for the absences is there so that we're able to record it appropriately in our student information system. And then the last one I hinted at earlier, communicating to parents the amount of school students are missing relative to their peers. We're really grateful for the OSSI partnership and the Deputy Mayor partnership with Everyday Labs that communicates for us to student families about the amount of school that they're missing relative to their peers, but that comes up in a lot of conversations too. So we maintain grade level in-seat attendance rates. We convert that into the number of days that they missed a year, or sometimes even the number of days that they miss per month for the average student. And then we share that with parents and parent-teacher conferences and communications, and we empower our teachers to do the same when they have more regular communication. So if a student has missed, let's say, 30 days and it's only December, they've missed about 5 or 6 days a month, sometimes 7 or 8 days a month from the start of the school year. To be chronically absent, you only need to miss, 2 days a month. So they've missed 4 times as many days a month as some of their peers that are not chronically absent. Then the teacher is able to drive it home and say, here are the lessons that they missed. They missed, working on these kind of words if they're in a phonics class in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. They missed fractions if they were in 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade. They missed the time that they had to research high school options if they're in 8th grade. And here's what you're missing out on the Meridian experience and why it's so important to make sure that they make it there every single day. And then I think if there's one other strategy that I want to hit on is that middle schoolers in large part are making the decision to come to school themselves. So we have to make it, and we've worked really hard to make it a loving and caring environment, not just for middle school, but also the lower grades. Our highest day of in-seat attendance on a Wednesday for our pre-K students last year was Valentine's Day. Anyone want to take a guess why everyone came in on Valentine's Day? Because who doesn't want to have a Valentine's Day party, right? So we started trying to find ways to have little parties on Wednesdays for our pre-K kids. And we talked through what does that look like? And what does the joy factor look like? And how do we make it so that, a 3-year-old is telling mom, I want to go to school today because otherwise I'm going to miss this party. And then it becomes a thing that you want to do. And same thing for our middle school students. We started a raffle for positive attendance. They can win a number of different things, whether it's Meridian swag. We had a donation of bicycles. We were giving away bicycles at one point, pizza parties, all sorts of ridiculous stuff that I couldn't even begin to enumerate all of the things that we gave away and did for them to bring them in. But they were losing their mind over the raffle. And I remember walking through the first time they did that, the amount of noise that was just coming out of every classroom when Dr. Tucker, one of our middle school assistant principals, was calling the numbers, and the words that they maybe shouldn't have said when their number wasn't called, but it was out of excitement, and it was a really positive thing to hear. That's all of our interventions. I'm happy to answer any other questions with my colleague, and I'm looking forward to talking more about this.
Thank you for that, Mr. McCray. I think just before you came on, Treasurer Wright mentioned that she had a question and that could apply to both LEAs. So thank you both for the presentation. Treasurer Wright, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Cruzy. Hello, school leaders. I realize I may have missed this, Mr. Imperator, when you were talking about it, but one of the things you heard our executive director talk about in her opening statement was the need for the entire city to address this issue. And as a former school leader in one of the most underserved parts of the city, and understanding the impact that has, we already saw the data of what that means for children, particularly east of the river, who are subject to more variables, how this impacts them even more. I guess my question to you is, and understanding all those strategies that you put in place, right, is what good school leaders do. I appreciate you all sharing it with the board and with the public, because I do think it's important for public to know the great things that school leaders do to address this. But my question, and I guess my charge to anybody from our city who may also be watching this, is what supports have you received as school leaders from the district agencies, et cetera, to help support this issue? I am hoping that since I've stepped down 4 years ago now, that there are, and particularly post-COVID, that there are additional resources coming your way. I'm pretty sure what I'm about to hear, but I would love to know what this looks like in terms of the city and supporting you. I know we have, or you all as school leaders have very clear obligations of you reach certain point, what you must do, who you must report to, et cetera. But then what happens? What type of supports are you getting from the city to support this issue? Don't worry, they're not gonna come after you, Mr. I asked the question, not you.
Is this live? Just to make sure I know my next steps here. No, I definitely think the accountability would be a major support. I know sometimes we are also thinking of all of the strategies and support systems that we can put in place for families and those types of things, and the resources that we want to provide for our families as well. And especially for families that may be underserved, making sure that they're receiving all of the right supports. But I think we also have to balance that with levels of accountability. There has to be something that families understand. To my colleague's point of, how much school your scholar is actually missing. And then what happens next when they miss, 10 days or when they're truant or when they're chronically absent, and how that's impacting their academics. So a lot of times we get in family conferences and sometimes families like, I don't understand why he's failing. And we pull up their attendance report and we're sharing that information as well. And just making the connection around when they miss 1 day a week or even the 2 days a month, that time adds up for a student. And so I believe also if we look at some of the data pre-pandemic and think about the accountability measures that were in place when I was in the classroom, and if you received a CFSA referral, it felt very different than I think families receiving the CFSA referral now. And even in taking that step, a lot of the things still come back on the school as the next steps that the school needs to do. But I do think there still have to be levels of accountability for families in understanding how it's, impacting their student and their students' achievement in school, and especially related to testing, just in their social emotional well-being as well. Students have a hard time getting into routines and expectations when they're not coming to school on a consistent basis. And I think some of the things even related to the immunization requirements, that significantly impacted a lot of families as well. with that in place, and understanding why we did put that in place for health and safety concerns, but just a lot came up for families of getting the immunizations done. And in those grade levels, we saw significant challenges with attendance too, from school year 21-22 to present.
And I think I want to push it a little bit more. Mr. McCray, please feel free to jump in here. Right, I do understand the accountability piece, and I appreciate you sharing that. But I guess what I'm wondering is, have you all found, right? I hear a lot about, we are doing this for the family, we're responding. Have you found that the district, that our city, the agencies have provided you with resources to support our families, right? Because we also want to assume the best of our families and that they want to their children in school, but a lot of times we know that there are barriers that appear. Have you been given resources through Department of Behavioral Health, I don't know, the Deputy Mayor of Education's office, to say, here are some additional resources that you can refer to your families to, et cetera, in order to help address this issue?
So I would echo everything that my colleague said. Accountability is important. One thing that I do appreciate that CFSA has started doing this year, and I believe they started it last year as well, was having office hours available for attendance teams to call in and maybe talk through specific cases. Even with that, I think it's very inconsistent. I don't know why CFSA chooses to pursue some cases and not others, even when to me they look exactly the same and we provide the same resources. Treasurer Wright, I appreciate you bringing up other external resources. I can't always speak to things that occur outside of Meridian. There may be others. Within Meridian, we do have a DBH partnership with a local CBO. They are occasionally helpful. One of the things that we're provided through that is a consistent social worker. When the social worker is staffed and at the building, it's very helpful. Unfortunately, we've gone a number of months sometimes where we don't have a social worker with us full time, as is the partnership that we're supposed to have. We were offered the opportunity to take it as grant funding instead, and a lump grant to kind of manage that on our own. We chose not to do that ultimately because we didn't think that the financial situation worked out for that. But that is sometimes a barrier that the city promises on paper and isn't always fulfilled as a result of not having that resources at Meridian.
Thank you. Which I think just underscores what you were saying, Dr. Walker Davis, of this being a real citywide issue that we appreciate how our schools are showing up to address, but understanding that some of these issues are bigger than what a school can do at the same time while trying to educate and make gains with children. Thank you, school leaders.
I want to thank our presenters. Thank you, Kirsten, for bringing this to our attention, walking us through this. This was informative. And as we mentioned at the top of the meeting, this is timely at any time of the school year. But I think, as you've shared, starting from the very beginning is the best way to get things started on the right foot. So best of luck as the school year begins. Thank you for coming to us this evening. Aisha, I think we may have some public commenters back in the queue, and we'd love to hear from them.
We do. We have Karina Flores first.
All right. Welcome, Karina.
I haven't pulled her yet. I'm gonna pull her now. Just letting her know.
Well, looking forward to it. I'll repeat earlier, as I mentioned earlier, our public commenters have registered in advance. They each have 2 minutes to speak. And it sounds like we have 3 coming forward right now, beginning with Karina Flores.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Karina Flores. I have about 4 kids that have attended Eagle Academy Public Charter School. And I have I have a son and 3 daughters that currently, my son doesn't currently attend Eagle, but he has in the past. And I actually have had a great experience with the special education department at Eagle Academy. 2 of my current kids are currently enrolled. And the progress from each 3 kids that have attended altogether, and I've dealt with the special education department at that school, they've helped 3 kids progress so much. And I just wanted to give a big shout out to that department at that school. I just want to make sure that my children continue to keep progressing. And I really do appreciate every single person at that school and that department.
Thank you, Ms. Flores.
Mhm.
Thank you for coming before us, and thank you for sharing your experience with us.
No problem.
Next up, I believe we have Ms. Kwatika Taylor.
Yes, I'm promoting her now. Ms. Taylor, please accept the panel promotion. If not, I'll just allow you to speak. I'll try one more time. If that doesn't work, I'll allow you to speak.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Miss Taylor. I just wrote a letter that I wanted to read.
That's great.
To whom it may concern, I'm writing to express my strong support for keeping Eagle Academy School open. As a member of the community and a parent of students at the school, I believe that Eagle Academy plays a vital role in providing high quality education and support to our children. Eagle Academy Elementary School has been a cornerstone of our community for many years, consistently demonstrating excellence in academics, extracurricular activities, and overall student support. The dedicated teachers and staff at Eagle Academy go above and beyond to ensure that every student receives a well-rounded education and the necessary tools to succeed, both academically and personally. The school focus on individual learning, small class sizes, and a supportive environment has made a significant impact on the lives of many students, including my own children. The sense of community and belonging fostered at Eagle Academy is invaluable and sets it apart from other schools in the area. Closing Eagle Academy would not only disrupt the education and well-being of current students, but also deprive future generations of the opportunity to benefit from the exceptional education provided by the school. I urge you to consider the importance of Eagle Academy Elementary School to our community and to explore alternative solutions to any challenges the school may be facing. Together, we can work to ensure that Eagle Academy continues to thrive and provide a nurturing environment for our children to learn and grow. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I'm confident that with the support of the community, we can find a way to keep Eagle Academy School open and continue its traditions of excellence.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Thank you for coming before us, and thank you for sharing your letter.
You're welcome.
Next, Ms. Claudette Musong.
Ms. Musong has already been promoted. All you have to do is come off camera or come off mute, and you can start your comment.
Shut up. Hello, everyone.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Claudette Musong. I'm a parent of a student at Eagle Academy. I would like to read a letter that I wrote. First off, I'm a proud parent of an Eagle Academy. I would like for their work well done to all students, including my son, who graduated 3rd grade from this school with flying colors. I definitely had wished school didn't end in 3rd grade. And hopefully by the time my second son is, who is in the 1st grade, graduates, they should have increased the grade levels of this beautiful institution. My greatest wish is for this school to have its doors open for this school year and the following years, because the teachers and all the administrators at this are doing an excellent job for our kids. And we all know it takes a village to do this job. Personally, I'm very comfortable with the school, its environment, and all the administrators. My prayer is for the beautiful institution to move to higher heights. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Musang. And the audio is a bit patchy there, but I just want to affirm that I have your letter here in the submitted public comment and that board members have had access to that. Thank you for sharing with us. Aisha, are there any other commenters that had registered? Is that it? That completes it?
That completes it.
Okay. Thank you for your support with that. And thank you again to our public commenters. I'm going to return to our agenda now and invite Bijan Lane. Is that right? Yes. Bijan, welcome. Our enrollment ceiling, regarding an enrollment ceiling increase request, I'll yield the floor to Bijan, our sector planning and compliance specialist, to introduce the proposal from Inspired Teaching Demonstration Public Charter School. And after she finishes speaking, to invite representatives from the school to provide remarks, Kate Keplinger, Sundai Riggins, and Michelle Lerner.
Thank you, Leah. Hello, my name is Bijan Lane. I am a specialist in the school performance department. Tonight, the board will hear from Inspired Teaching Demonstration Public Charter School regarding its request to increase its enrollment ceiling by 16 students, raising the total from 520 students to 536, beginning in school year 2025-26. The request breaks down to 2 students per grade or 1 student per classroom for grades 1 through 8. To date, DC PCSB has not received any public comments regarding this proposal. Representatives from the school are here to answer your questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Lerner. I'm the chair of ITDS, and I just wanted to say that this request is so that our school can better serve our community and deliver on the education we want to give to our ITDS students and families.
Welcome.
Hi, this is Kate Keplinger. I just have a few things to add from the basic summary that we sent. This is basically a way for us to make sure that we can be fully enrolled. Our actual enrollment target is staying at 520 students, but as you know, when you're doing the offers and seats, you offer more than you can always, or maybe fill a little bit, because a lot of people, if people don't take the seat or they go somewhere else. And so, for example, this year we ended up with 522 students in our building because we had made a few more people accepted than we expected to accept, and a few fewer people left than we thought we were going to leave. And so this really just gives us a little bit of a buffer to make sure if we enroll 1 or 2 more students, our enrollment ceiling allows for that, and then we would get the funds to support those students. And a lot of times what we're seeing has happened in the last couple of years is that we've let a couple students in because they're siblings, and we're trying to keep families together. And this would give us just a little bit of wiggle room to make sure that we could keep families together with this just a slight enrollment ceiling increase. But again, we don't intend to enroll over 520. That is our target. That is our class size that we intend to keep. But this just gives us a little bit of space if we end up with 521 or 522 students. And like last year was the first year that happened. The previous year we were at 519. So we're kind of hovering around 520 and just want that a little bit of flexibility in that space. But otherwise, that's about how simple it is. Not too much else to it. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Thank you, Inspired Teaching School Community. Can you remind me, did school start today? Did school start next week?
Tomorrow.
Oh.
Tomorrow.
It's the eve.
Yep.
Thank you for spending your eve together with us, and thank you for coming before us this evening. I'm going to open it up for some questions from board members, and I'll pop back in when appropriate. Board members, does anyone else have questions to kick things off? I'm going to jump right in then. When we're reviewing the data from the last full school year that we have available data for, 22-23. So not the one that just ended, the year before that. Can you share with us, we've observed some disparities in PARCC median growth percentile for students with disabilities, economically disadvantaged students, and Black students in both ELA and math. Can you share with us, as we think about standard of approval here, we're looking across a whole range of measures, and growth performance according to subgroup is something we're paying attention to.
Hi, good evening. Sunday Riggins, head of school. So something that we have been just looking at as a school is one of the unique characteristics of our school is that there is a transition point in about 5th grade. Number one school that families choose is Washington Latin. So we get an influx of new students around 5th grade. And what we've noticed is that for our subgroup data, a lot of our sort of like below the growth profile is with our middle school students because it is a bit of a transient year. And so some of the things that we have discussed and talked about in comparison to post-pandemic, just trying to have some level of academic recovery when in the past, our elementary grades have had a 2-educator model and the middle school had not. The middle school was still growing, still developing curriculum and some of those things. So something we've looked at is we have shifted our middle grades to a 2-educator model as well, knowing that we get kids coming in from different schools, transferring in, getting to know the students better, and so making sure that they have more academic support. Something else that we've done is we've added an additional interventionist so that we can make sure that our intervention supports and services for students are departmentalized, because in the past we've had one interventionist sort of working across the whole building and just looking at our data, realizing that that wasn't appropriate to meet the needs of the students that we serve. Some other shifts that we've done, we have also shifted our tier 2 and tier 3 supports to research-based interventions to make sure that teachers have the training and things that they need to be able to work with the students. And we also have this year started with Wit and Wisdom to make sure that we have a science of reading based curriculum. And so we do realize that our median growth percentage for our subgroups is not where we would want it to be. And it's in that category of technically not met. But we put a lot of things in looking at the data to figure out what are some of the root causes. And a lot of that, quite frankly, was just around curriculum and also sort of like the transition of teachers from pandemic to present and having new staff members, making sure that they're getting trained, making sure that they get to know the students. So wanting to make sure that we're able to provide a plethora of resources and or also transitioning to more research-based curricula to make sure that we're able to really monitor our subgroups well and get them the support, give teachers the support that they need in order to be able to support students.
And this is Michelle Lerner adding from the board perspective. The board adopted a new strategic plan last school year that's in its first year this school year that sets pretty bold targets for academic and belonging goals, specifically ensuring that our students and families who identify as Black and students and families who have students with disabilities are better served and that we begin to close those gaps at a faster rate. I can say that this year, Dr. Riggins has been prioritizing special education with more grade level expertise and bringing on some new special ed educators. And we have some early wins for doing algebra for all in 8th grade. So we are starting to build additional structures to see faster progress in those gaps.
Thank you for the context. And Dr. Riggins, please forgive me for not acknowledging the correct salutations earlier. I appreciate the explanation from the board perspective as well as from the school perspective. I'll continue. You've mentioned the strategic plan. Can you share with us what kind of long-term plans are for any expected or anticipated growth or expansion beyond this proposed increase? As you may have heard from previous board meetings, we're really thinking very carefully about the demand in the sector, population changes around the city, by neighborhood, across the full city, birth rate declines that we understand started happening a few years ago. So can you give us some broader context here?
I can take that one. So we're not actually planning to have more students. We've had hovering around 520 students for since the 2021 school year. And that is our plan to stay that way. So the 536 is really just to give us the space in case we over enroll over the 520 by like 1 or 2 students, but we're not actually trying to recruit in more students than we already have. We're trying to maintain at that 520. And we haven't had a problem being in that 520. We've basically been in the 519 to 522 for the last 3 years. We have wait lists at all of our grades, even at Count A by October. So we feel pretty confident that our enrollment will stay stable as it has been for the last about 4 years, which is really what we're planning to do. We're not planning to actually go over. We just need the space in case we do so that we can get the compensation for the number of students we have in the building.
Got it. So this will not affect the current student-teacher ratio?
No, it doesn't affect the facility or the teacher ratio or any of that. Yeah.
Okay, Bijan, we will invite the Inspired Teaching Group back next month, is it, for the board to vote?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, folks. And hey, happy back to school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's going to be a beautiful day. Bijan will be sticking around to next introduce the proposal for a temporary facility request from social justice. And we'll be inviting back to our board meeting representatives from the school, Myron Long and Amber Goodness. Welcome.
Thank you again. Hello again. Tonight, the board will hear from Social Justice Public Charter School regarding its request to temporarily operate exclusively out of Impact DMV Church, located at 5335 First Place Northeast. In June 2024, DC PCSB approved Social Justice Public Charter School to relocate to 333 Kennedy Street Northeast and operate new modular units. However, these modular units are not yet ready. Social Justice Public Charter School also proposes using space at the church for athletic activities throughout school year 2024-25 and for the first half of school year 25-26. To begin operation by the first day of school on August 26th, DC PCSB has opted to expedite consideration and approval of this request. To date, DC PCSB has not yet received any public comments regarding this proposal. Representatives from the school are here to answer your questions.
Welcome back, social justice community.
Hello, good to see you all, as always. So just to provide context, the strategy for the temporary site is in service of us being able to obtain our permanent facility. As we told you all last time we were here, we really made this decision based on community input. Our students and our families advocated for us to stay in Ward 5, and we acquiesced to their desires because we're a community-driven school. And so we wanted to stay within this particular neighborhood. And so to provide context, the modular installer did not adequately assess the additional construction that needed to take place in order for the modulars to be installed. And once we realized that, we quickly went into action, assembled a team with a project manager, expediters, of course, attorneys as well, to really try to move this process moving forward. But I will say what I have learned throughout, our small but mighty 5 years here is that you have to have at least 3 or 4 contingency plans in your back pocket in order to make sure that you can serve our students and families. And so we have been really thankful to Pastor Lee and the Impact DMV Church, who's really a pillar in the community and really wants to partner with organizations who are mission aligned. And so they have allowed us to rent their basement space, which is approximately 10,000 square feet, and also the upstairs space, which is another 10,000 square feet. In the event there is a delay in the modular classrooms. And we submitted our budget, and there's minimal impact to the indicators that you all look at in terms of days of cash on hands and net income with this additional cost. And so again, I have to super shout out Pastor Lee and the Impact DMV Church. They've actually partnered with us since we started. They've done backpack giveaways to our families and food giveaways to our families since we started. So we're just thankful for that relationship. Again, we anticipate this being a temporary move for a few weeks, and we're continuing to put pressure on all of the different agencies involved in order to make sure that this happens very quickly for our families. Once we found out that there was, like, of course, you all know with DOB, the milestones and the end zones keep changing. And so once we find out that there was a certain particular likelihood of a delay, we went into action and make sure that all of our families receive notifications via emails and calls as well. And our families have been, they're with us. They're like, okay, we get it. We understand, like, you all are doing everything that you can, the best that you can in order to move this forward. Just make sure that you please keep us updated and in the loop so that we can, effectively open up for the first day of school as well. So I can pause there, but just wanted to give you all a little bit of context and answer any questions that you all might have.
Thank you for that, Myron. Can you remind me when the first day of school is supposed to be?
Next Monday.
All right.
So if you have any time you want to come and help volunteer, move some desks, just let me know. Just kidding.
Yep.
Kind of.
I'm going to kick things off. Can you share with us, get as specific and tactical as you feel like you need to on what the kind of specific causes for the delay in the modular installation?
Yeah, I think that the installer did not adequately assess the land that the module was going to be on, and it required a couple of different aspects that needed to go into it. So additional grading of the land and also like electricity to be ran to the unit. And so we've been thankful to work with the foundation that's helping us in this matter to assemble a very strong team to really provide our own assessors of those projects so that we could fully understand the implications. Amber and I have become, I would say, mini construction experts now, knowing all of the things that need to happen in order for modulars to be installed. So that's really the delay here. And so once we assembled that team and allowed our project manager and expediters to move the needle forward, we went into action very quickly. And all of the permits have been approved. We're still waiting for PEPCO to come and set up the meter. But outside of that, we should be ready to start to move and groove very, very soon.
Okay, you sound teed up. I'm going to pass to Carissa Stanley-Bay next.
Thank you, Chair Cruzy. Mr. Long, could you just talk a little bit more about your sort of security of the DMV church space? So how big is it? And are you guys going to be occupying the entire space? How many square feet is it?
It's 20,000 square feet altogether. And for the first few weeks, it will be the entire space. But after we move into the modulars, it would only be the like basement kind of like multi-purpose kind of space for the year. And that's another 10,000 square feet.
Okay, so it's 20,000 square feet until your modulars are done.
Correct.
Okay.
And if we need them, I mean, the church has been really gracious and they told us if we need additional space, we can definitely use the upstairs space if we need to as well.
Okay. And then are you leasing from the church or is it a sublease?
It's a license agreement. There's one license agreement for the renting of the kind of multi-purpose space that includes a condition or a clause around if we have to occupy them in the event of a delay, it's an additional cost on top of the licensing fee.
Okay. And just refresh my memory, please. I'm trying to do quick math in my head. How many students will you be starting with day one in terms of the space?
Probably about 120.
Okay. And is that from everything that you can tell, is that appropriate space for you? Do you feel you're underhoused, overhoused, or is it right where you want to be?
I think it's yeah, great question. Right where we want to be. There are several classrooms. I mean, that's the beauty. I think that's why parents were reassured, because it's not like it's just kind of like open space. They'll set up in like with pews and things of that nature, because the church has, Sunday school and other activities that they run out of the church. So the beautiful thing is that there are multiple classrooms that we can use on both floors for instruction, but also for staff to be there and for pull-out spaces to support, kids who need additional services as well.
Okay. And I'm sure obviously you took this into consideration when you selected the space, but in terms of like cafeteria space, like it suits all of your needs in terms of what you need to serve your students.
Definitely. So our students gave us some feedback over the years on our food provider, and we listened to that feedback and actually changed food providers. And so the meals come hot and ready to serve for our students and families.
Okay. And then the only other question I had was, you mentioned once your modular space is done, then you'll relocate, but you'll still potentially use the basement of the church, right?
Yes, only for for PE, essentially, ultimately, consider it like an open multi-purpose room, is that we'll use it for that purpose.
And your agreement with the church allows you to sort of be flexible in terms of when the full 20,000 square feet usage will be up and you'll sort of transition to less usage. Your agreement allows you that flexibility.
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. And congratulations on finding space. I'm in Ward 5, so I pass DMV Church all the time. I was sharing with the board, it's deeper than it looks from the front. And so I'm happy that you all have found space that accommodates you and that allows you to serve the community in a way that's appropriate for your scholars and for your team. So
thank you. We are too. Yeah, it's a really big building. It's actually like two buildings that it's hard to describe, but it's a very big building. Yeah. And Impact DMV Church is excellent. I mean, they've partnered with charter schools they're in the general area over the past couple of years. So we're just really excited and thankful for their partnership.
And then one more question, Myra, is there parking there?
There is some parking there. But we rent a lot. We rent parking spaces from a parking garage near the school. And so, teachers will just park there as opposed to parking near the church. But there is some parking there as well. And then there's a parking lot that they own across the street that they rent out spaces to DCB as well.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Cruzy.
Thank you, Board Member Stanley Beatty. And Myron, thank you for entertaining all of these questions. It's a good reminder for all of us of how the unique nature that charter school leaders and communities have to navigate a whole different set of processes and realities and operational realities than those who may just be granted a building. I appreciate this. And, this, because of the urgent nature of this request, given that school is opening and there's a lot of moving parts here, we're going to be processing this on an expedited basis. This means that we're holding a vote later this evening. Okay. So this item will be on our consent calendar, which will close out tonight's meeting.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thank you all. Thank you all for expediting this process. And also, I agree with you, Chairman Cruzy, about the need that single site schools who don't just inherit a building have. So definitely echoing that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Bijan. So finally, in our public hearing agenda is a request for policy revisions. And for that, I'll yield the floor to Maddie Hook, policy specialist. And Maddie, please forgive me if I mispronounced your last name there, to introduce the proposal for revisions to the school transparency policy and the data and document submission and verification policy.
Thanks, Leah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Madeline Hauk, and I am a specialist in the External Affairs Department. This is a public hearing to discuss proposed revisions to the school transparency and the data and document submission and verification policy. Staff recommends changing the name of the policy from the school transparency policy to the public information policy, and removing the option to rely on DCPCSB's website to share student and family policies, school calendars, schools board meeting minutes and other materials, and other critical information. Currently, schools can link to DCPCSB's website to provide this information. However, DCPCSB's website is not an intuitive place for the public to seek such information. Instead, staff proposes requiring schools to publish materials on their websites beginning July 1st, 2025. The data and document submission and verification policy includes language reinforcing the expectation that schools use DCPCSB's website to disseminate school information. Staff recommends eliminating this language. We received one public comment asking us to implement the policy in school year 25-26 and continue to post materials on our website. We seek to implement the policy on July 1st, 2025, which will be in the 25-26 school year, and we plan to post pertinent materials like schools' annual reports and key contacts on our website going forward. I am here to answer any of your questions.
Okay, Maddie, I will kick things off. You just answered this, but I get really turned around when we talk about school years with numbers of hyphens. So the request from one submitter issued a public comment saying they requested it after a school year, and we're going to implement it before that school year.
No, so the submission recommended that we wait an entire school year. So essentially do not implement it right now. And we are waiting until July 1st of 2025 to implement this. So schools have a year to become accustomed to this transition.
Great, so we're entering into the 24-25 school year.
Yes.
The year after this school year.
Yes.
Got it, thank you. Secretary Shakura Adamafanian, I believe you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Maddie, for your presentation tonight. One question here. Can you speak to the timeline for implementation and how you will support schools to understand the new requirements and make sure that they come into compliance?
Yes, absolutely. So one of our goals with this is to give schools a really long runway to become to understand the requirements, to update their websites accordingly. And we want to make sure they have time to establish the staff members that will be managing these online materials. Our plan, as I said, is to implement this policy next July. So over the next 11 months, we plan to include the new requirements and the updates about the implementation timeline in our consistent newsletters and other communications with schools and the regular emails that school leaders receive. We also plan to hold multiple workshop and office hours over the next year so that schools can come to us with questions, and we can also go through a process for how schools can get into compliance.
Thank you.
Maddie, I had one follow-up question here, kind of related to Secretary Adamafanian's. So the spirit here, if I'm a parent and I'm looking for this information through this school year, you'd come to our website. Thereafter, I go to my child's website.
Yes, absolutely. And I do think it's important to say that a lot of our schools have chosen to have many of these materials on their websites for that reason. We're essentially requiring this in policy going forward to create that intuitive line of thinking.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And if members of the public are interested, they can find that information relative to that school at that school's website. Great. Thank you very much. And is this something we need to vote on next meeting? Yes, we'll be voting on it next month.
Yes, Chair Cruzy, we're planning to vote in September.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
This is the public hearing portion of our meeting this evening. Board members, may I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
I move to approve the August 19th, 2024 board meeting agenda with one adjustment, moving the vote on Maya Angelou's amendment request from the consent calendar for further discussion and a vote during our public meeting.
Second.
Thank you very much. Secretary Adamafanian, would you hold a roll call vote? And just a reminder that we have a proxy vote from board member Nick Rodriguez, who's unable to be here in person this evening.
Absolutely, thank you. Chairwoman Cruzy?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Sandman?
Aye.
Treasurer Wright?
Aye.
Board Member Stanley Beatty?
Aye.
Board Member Davis?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez by proxy voted yes. And then I am an aye as well.
The amended agenda is approved. So we will be discussing and voting on Maya Angelou's Public Charter Schools amendment request after we discuss the requests related to Friendship Public Charter Schools and Eagle Academy Public Charter Schools asset acquisition proposal. So for that, I will now yield the floor to Melody Sampson, Chief School Performance Officer, to introduce that proposal and recommendation for the asset acquisition between Friendship Public Charter School and Eagle Academy, Public Charter School. And we have quite a few representatives from both schools to provide remarks this evening.
Thank you, Chair Cruzy. Again, I am Melody Sampson, DCPCSB's Chief School Performance Officer. DCPCSB staff recommends that the board, 1, approve the proposed asset acquisition between Eagle Academy Public Charter School and Friendship Public Charter School. 2, approve Friendship Public Charter School's corresponding charter agreement amendment request. And 3, appoint Chair Cruzy to sign the amended agreement on the board's behalf. As you recall, on July 10, 2024, DCPCSB voted to cite Eagle Academy for fiscal mismanagement and issue a financial corrective action plan. Given its financial challenges, the Eagle Academy board began exploring potential asset acquisitions or school takeovers for school year 24-25. On July 18, 2024, the Eagle Academy board voted to approve Friendship's school takeover proposal. If the board approves the acquisition, Eagle Academy will renounce its right to operate Eagle Academy Public Charter School Capitol Riverfront and Eagle Academy Public Charter School Congress Heights, and Friendship Public Charter School will assume responsibility for these campuses and facilities. Current Eagle Academy students will be permitted to enroll at their school under Friendship Public Charter School management without going through the My School DC lottery. Additionally, Friendship Public Charter School requests a gradual enrollment ceiling increase of 508 students over 5 years, beginning in school year 26-27. The maximum enrollment total would increase from 5,115 students to 5,623. During last week's special public hearing on the matter, Eagle Academy leadership said the school, quote, will not meet its FCAP targets with current projected enrollment, end quote, and called into question the school's ability to remain financially stable. These admissions from the school, along with DC PCSB staff's analysis of Eagle Academy's current financial position, suggest Eagle Academy may no longer be economically viable, compelling DC PCSB to initiate the charter revocation process to determine whether the school's charter should ultimately be revoked. Charter revocation is a lengthy process that could result in Eagle Academy's closure well into school year 24-25, thereby placing the school's students and staff in a precarious state awaiting a revocation determination. This proposal would minimize disruption to the school community and allow current Eagle Academy families, students, and staff to begin the new school year with as much certainty and stability as possible. Further, Friendship Public Charter School is practiced in school takeovers, having been party to several relatively successful asset acquisitions, most recently including Ideal Academy Public Charter School and Hope Community Public Charter School, Lamond. DC PCSB received 11 comments in support of the proposal and 2 against it by the close of the public comment window on August 14th. Leaders from both schools are available to give remarks and answer the board's questions. In particular, I invite Friendship Public Charter School to summarize adjustments to its proposal submitted via email this evening.
Melody, before we hear from the school, I know you also said something about Friendship doing something this evening. If I'm not mistaken, we also received additional public comment from the State Board of Education board members as well that actually was not in favor. Is that correct? Well, I know we did, so I actually don't need you to correct it.
Okay, I didn't receive it, but thank you.
Okay, okay. So I just want to note that we actually did receive additional public comment that actually is not in support as well. So I just want to make sure our record is clear.
Welcome, friendship community. Do you have a presentation for us?
Certainly. Thank you. First, we realize that you have a difficult decision before you and that some see this decision as being about saving the Eagle Academy organization. We can't save Eagle, but we can and we must stand for our city's little Eagles, the hundreds of children whose families, despite doing everything right by enrolling this spring, now face the urgent threat of starting the new school year without a guaranteed seat, without a school, and without the stability and choice that other families in the district have. I have watched this board for some time, and so I believe that your decisions tonight will come with a responsible and compassionate plan for the children and families affected, and I respect the deep consideration that you have already given to this matter. With respect to the modification of our proposal, Friendship stands ready to open the school on August 26th. But should you decide to delay the decision to a start for July 1, we would accept that as well, as we understand the importance of having a school open for the children that are there. Finally, we submitted a proposal asking for an enrollment ceiling increase of 508. That obviously can be staggered. We'd hope that the board would approve 350 to accommodate the Eagle students today for the next 2 years. And should we meet those numbers, then approve the additional 158 seats that we requested. Finally, Friendship Public Charter School has proposed taking over the operations of Eagle, Capitol Riverfront, and Congress Heights campuses to ensure that no child is left behind on day one of the 24-25 school year or beyond. With 26 years of experience, a disciplined approach to school management, our financial stability, and strong academic track record, we are prepared to ensure a smooth transition for Eagle students, giving them the high-quality education and assurances that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brantley, and welcome, Eagle community. Did the Eagle community have any presentation they would like to share at the board before we begin any kind of questions?
I had a few remarks that I'd like to make, if that's okay.
Welcome.
PCSB board and staff, my name is Aaron Lentner. I'm here once again as the board chair of Eagle Academy. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak with you again today. Eagle was founded by Cassandra Pinkney in 2003. Over the past 20 years, thousands of children have gotten a strong emotional start thanks to our amazing staff. We have held on to the vision that Ms. Pinkney set for creating a community school in which all children can learn. I am here tonight in hopes that this mission can continue, just with different stewards. As I stated last week, we are confident an acquisition with Friendship will ensure the best outcome for Eagle's 350 students and their family. 1 week from today, Eagle students from pre-K to third grade will walk out the door for their first day of school. These children are expecting to walk through the doors of our school that they know and be greeted by the teachers, friends, and dedicated staff that they know. Their parents have already figured out the logistics of before care and after care, and which walking, bus, or car route to take, and which beginning of year activities they'll attend. With a merger with Friendship, these families get to maintain this continuity and remove uncertainty. With this merger, 80+ hardworking staff members get to keep their jobs. Also, Friendship is not just financially strong, they are academically strong. Thus, beyond continuity, these children will have an improved educational experience with Friendship, an LEA whose elementary schools are scoring at the top level of the Aspire performance framework. For those who suggest that these students could simply go to another school, I ask them to think about the social, emotional toll it will take on the children and their families to change their plans and figure out which school will fulfill their child's unique needs with just 4 business days before the school is set to open. From the initial effective organizational meeting back in May, when PCSB's board met with Eagle's board for the first time to bring the financial concerns to our attention, we have sought to be solution-oriented and strictly follow the guidance of PCSB and staff. It was then back in May that our board realized many of the reports and budgets that the previous CEO had provided for us to make oversight decisions were not accurate. PCSB staff had access to more accurate financial information than even Eagle's board had at that time. PCSB staff held a mirror up, revealing our finances in a way that allowed us to truly understand the changes that need to be made, and that we thank them for that. As I shared last week, various PCSB staff and board members suggested that we explore an asset acquisition as a potential path forward. Based on what we know, our request for a merger with Friendship falls within the realm of what PCSB has approved in past acquisitions. Also, to our knowledge, the proposal is within the bounds of current PCSB policies. I could not find one PCSB policy that named that an acquisition would be denied in a scenario with factors similar to ours. If such a policy existed, we would not have pursued the acquisition. And regarding the timeline, we have followed the steps that PCSB staff instructed us to take when we first informed them of our plans. Had we been prompted to present our proposal at an earlier board meeting date, we would have done so. As it stands, conditional employment offers from Friendship have gone out to Eagle staff, and families are awaiting the first day of school. Eagle Academy has been a labor of love. This ordeal is a learning lesson for what charter school boards need to do better, and our board should have done better and acted earlier. That said, I'm asking PCSB's board to vote based on what is in the best interest of hundreds of students and families that Eagle serves. A merger with Friendship is the best path forward and will lead to excellent educational outcomes for our children. I'd like to acknowledge the vision and inspiration of Ms. Pickney, the hard work of Eagle staff, and the support of Eagle families, and most of all, the wonderful children that we've had a privilege of serving. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lentner. As I mentioned, we have quite a few representatives from both school communities here. Before we begin questions and comments from our board, I'd like to invite everybody to identify themselves and their role with your respective school communities. And to kick things off in the order of your presentation this evening, we'll begin with Friendship, and then we'll follow with the Eagle communities. We'll begin with Pat, and then we'll follow with you, Mr. Lentner. Sorry, Pat, could you begin by identifying yourself and then popcorning it as—
Absolutely. Sorry, Pat Brantley, CEO of Friendship, and Darren Glim.
Good afternoon, good evening. I am Darren Glimp. I am the treasurer and chair of the finance committee of Friendship Public Charter School.
James Waller.
Good evening, James Waller, chief of school operations.
See Vioka Scott Marcus.
Vioka Scott Marcus, chief academic officer for Friendship Public Charter School.
Trustee Jeanette Menz.
Jeanette Menz, parent representative, board of trustees, Friendship Public Charter Schools.
I believe Eric McKinley King.
He is on.
I am Eric King, trustee.
And Ken Cherry.
Ken Cherry, chief of staff.
And my apologies if I've missed anyone, but that's the Friendship team.
Thank you. On to Eagle.
I'm Aaron Lentner, chair of the board of trustees of Eagle Academy. I have Aisha Briscoe here.
Aisha Briscoe, Eagle vice chair and treasurer.
And Ms. Jennifer Leonard.
Good evening, Jennifer Leonard, chief financial officer.
And our CEO could not be here due to family reasons at the last minute. So she sends her regards.
That's good. Thank you. One day we will be back in an in-person setting where we could literally look around and see who we need to introduce. Thank you for working with this for now. I believe Vice Chair Sandman has a question to begin.
Yes. My understanding is that the asset acquisition agreement assumes that Friendship will be able to continue Eagle's operations in the two facilities where it currently provides educational services. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I'm looking at page 3 of the proposed asset acquisition agreement, section 3A, Roman 5. I'm sorry, Roman 4. And a condition precedent to closing by Friendship is that the District of Columbia Department of General Services will have provided all required approvals for the assignment of the Congress Heights and Capitol Riverfront campuses to Friendship. My questions are about where things stand. School opens a week from today. If this were approved today, is Friendship considering operating the school as of a week from today?
That is correct. We are considering operating it as a week from today. There are two, talking of the Congress Heights site, which is the DGS leased property.
Yes.
And that underlying lease says that assignment has to be done through DGS through a request from Eagle Academy, and that such an assignment can be approved by DGS. There is also a loan with a leasehold deed of trust that is held by John Marshall Bank, which has already given us terms for the assumption. And that is also part of what DGS needs in order to assign the lease to us. And so those requests are already in place and expected. And I don't know if, James, you want to add to that from your conversations with the portfolio manager at DGS.
Yes, those requests have been submitted to DGS. They're under review, and we should hear some information very shortly. The Riverfront property is a commercial property, and that property is not under DGS.
It is
But
not.
we're also
We
negotiating
also
with that
have
landlord.
Yes.
Is my understanding correct that you could not operate at the Eagle facility in Congress Heights as of next Monday without prior approval by DGS?
That is not our understanding. The DGS lease allows Eagle to lease a portion of, sublease a portion of the space, and given the low enrollment in the building, it would not have to use the maximum amount of space in the building. And so that would be if there was a sublease to us. Also, technically, Eagle would still have control over the building, and so we believe that we can operate.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying, for you to commence operations next Monday, Eagle could sublease a portion of the Congress Heights premises to you sufficient to conduct operations and still be in compliance with the terms of the lease.
Correct. The facility, as I know it, had at some point held over 800, almost 900 students, and currently is about 250. And given the way that the underlying lease is written, you can sublease up to a portion of the building.
Okay, that would allow you to get started, but you're contemplating that ultimately you're going to be able to take over the whole facility. Is that right?
That's right.
What is the schedule for that approval by DGS, and what if that doesn't happen?
So there's a possibility that it does not happen. It is not a possibility that we have ever seen in what DGS does. I think that we obviously want to do this in partnership with DGS. We also recognize that the very significant loan on this building, if no school is operating in it, also fails, which is an issue. And so based on the documents that we've reviewed from John Marshall Bank, they do have an interest in keeping a school in place in the building, and that is captured in their leasehold deed of trust with DGS.
So tell me more about that. Is that something that you think provides an incentive not only to the lender, but to DGS?
Absolutely.
And your request pending before DGS is for approval of the transfer of the property, or the entirety of the property, the lease to you. That's right? Is that correct?
Yes, it's the assignment of the lease to us. That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. I have some questions for PCSB staff. If we were not to approve the asset acquisition and Eagle were to continue to operate for some period of time, but was not able to make it, say until the October date when they would get their first payment for the year, or through the end of the year, what funds are available to DCSB to continue to support operation of the school and take care of the transition of students out from Eagle to other schools? I'm trying to assess the alternative to the asset acquisition agreement.
Yes, thank you for the question, Vice Chair Sandman. I will take a stab at that question, and if you want further detail, I'll ask our Chief Operating Officer to provide information. As you know, we budget annually for costs related to school closure, and that is the efforts that DCPS staff would have to do at the point of contemplating closure, any assistance that we would have to do in the wind down of a school, or any other supports that might need to be provided. That is separate and apart from any financial intervention that might be necessary for a school. So we would have to assess, one, how much that cost would be, but prior to even getting to that, I think if we were at a place where we were contemplating revocation, or in the revocation process, we would have considerable control over the finances of the school and would work to reduce those costs as much as possible so that there would be little output by PCSB. But we do have some margin in our budget for closure cost, and we would have to assess what that level of intervention would be from PCSB.
Are you able to say how much is in the budget for that?
I will ask our Chief Operating Officer if there's a ballpark that you can provide.
Thanks for the question, Council Lord, Board Member Sandman. We are prepared to support a closure that may cost anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million if necessary. Those are ballpark numbers. And there may be some additional costs for the actual closure process on our typical expected end of things. So those are ballpark numbers, but our budget big picture prepares costs of the like.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you for that. Treasurer Wright, I think you had a comment or question you want to make.
Yep. So my first question, thank you all for being here this evening. My question is actually to the staff. So there were a lot of questions asked to Friendship about the DGS process. And my question to you is, what work have we done to make sure we understand the process and the way that Eagle's lease currently reads? And I say this because as a former school leader that was part of a DGS ground lease, I'm pretty familiar with the form lease that the city uses around district buildings. And what Ms. Brantley just shared with me is not my understanding of the way that it works. And regardless of space, DGS always needs to sign off on any use of the building outside of the primary tenant. So my question to staff is, what have we done to make sure we understand what is required, particularly before potentially voting for another school to go into a district-owned building? I'm not talking about the riverfront. I hear Mr. Waller, that's private, it's a completely different situation.
Yep, I will thank you, Treasurer Wright. So our legal team has reviewed the lease as well as the terms of the asset acquisition proposal as currently drafted. And as you know, that suggests that the asset acquisition is final upon, in the case of that Congress Heights facility, DGS's approval of that lease. So from a technical perspective, even if you were to approve the asset acquisition, it is not final and complete, nor is Eagle's relinquishment of his charter final and complete until that approval happens for that facility. I cannot speak to what Ms. Brantley shared about the sublease part of it, but our role was to review what the necessary requirements are for the asset acquisition. And as stated, it is dependent on the approval of DGS for that lease to be turned over fully to Friendship.
Okay, right. And I get that it needs to be, it's a condition proceeding. It has to be. So I understand that. And so I guess part of what I want to make sure is that we're not putting on record. I want us to be very careful. And maybe Eagle knows, let me not assume. Eagle, do you know what rights and where we could find that in, because I know we also have the sublease here, where we could find the right that you have a right to sublease portions of the DGS owned building without permission in advance from DGS.
Do you have that answer, Jennifer?
Ms. Wright, I'm going to have to review the terms of the lease. My understanding, based on precedents, is that we've been able to lease to other nonprofit organizations and schools up until today. And so I wouldn't see how leasing to Friendship would be any different, but I will find the language as soon as I can and send that over.
Okay, and again, I think you having been able to do it and where you have sought the permission and approval of DGS in advance, I think are two different things. And given some of the behaviors that we've seen from this LEA, I'm also going to question whether or not, if you have entered into sublease without DGS permission, the oversight of your fiscal behavior has not demonstrated to me a level of confidence that I should have that you have followed those rules. So I just want to be blunt with that. And I have read the lease, and I don't see that to be the case without the express permission of DGS. And I do understand that this can go and be approved, understanding that it is a condition precedent. My question, and I think it follows what Vice Chairman Salmon said, in the event that it does not happen and we authorize this, we are equally, these same students that you are asking us to be thoughtful about, we are equally putting them at jeopardy if Friendship is not, if the DGS, because again, this is not just Friendship, this is actually about actions that Eagle, you should be doing, if DGS does not approve this sublease. So that I want to leave it right there now, Chair Cruzy, and I'll release to my other, it was not actually a question, it was much more rhetorical statement.
Thank you, Treasurer Wright. Secretary Shukra Adamathanian, I believe you have the next question.
Thank you. Good evening, Friendship team. Good evening, Eagle team. I'll jump right in. I do have two questions. Question number one, to the Eagle team, if the asset acquisition is not approved tonight, what are you all prepared to do to move forward? And we just want to capture that on record tonight. And then I'll come and ask my second question.
I believe that I testified to this effect at our last meeting, but the Eagle board will have to convene and make some tough decisions on what we believe is the best next step for students and our families. So that decision has not been voted on by Eagle's board, and we will do so upon the conclusion of your vote here.
A follow-up question before my second question. Mr. Lettner, what has been discussed? I suspect that the board has tossed around some sort of idea. And so I'm curious about what has been discussed, thought about, considered for this.
The options are somewhat binary. Either we decide to relinquish our charter, or we decide to open and attempt to find other avenues of financing or other avenues of cost-cutting measures. But as I testified last week, I'm not sure, and those are not confident to be successful, which is why we think that pursuing an asset acquisition with Friendship is the best path forward. And
when
we
you
agree
say
with PCSB
confident,
staff.
Understood. When you say those are not confident to be successful, what does that actually mean?
I'm speaking with respect to Jennifer Leonard's testimony relative to at the various enrollment levels, where we would stand relative to FCAP targets and where we would stand relative to making payroll throughout the year.
Okay, I believe in the last meeting, what was in the documents was that you all would be able to sustain through the end of the school year with your current enrollment. You wouldn't make the enrollment target for the FCAP, but you are able to, with the current enrollment that you have, able to sustain operations through the end of the year. Is that correct?
Jennifer, do you want to clarify that?
Yes. So if we were to make our enrollment target of 375, which is what we've built our budget around, then if we had no major unforeseen events, then we would squeak by on payroll on several weeks. And what I mean squeak by is there's one payroll in September in which we would have less than $2,000 cash with current projections and no major unforeseens. If we, that's if we do make our enrollment and targeted, our enrollment target and budgeted amount of 375 students. As of about a week ago, enrollment at Eagle was, it was 353 students. So we would be short today about 22 students. So if we made it to the October 5th audit enrollment at 353, we'd be short 22 students. The average amount of funds that we've budgeted per student based on what we know about the SPED weights, the at-risk weights, all the various per pupil funding allotments, we would be short about $704,000. And that is before FCAP targets. So we have 22 students times 32,000 per student, equals $704,000. So that is how much we would have to cut from our budget, again, with no unforeseen situations in order to make it through the entire year. And I'm putting the FCAP aside.
Understood. And for a second, have you all done forecasting around what those $704,000 cuts would mean for your staffing?
So as I shared in last week's hearing, we are in an unfortunate situation of having stripped everything down to only critical expenses. And what I mean by that is critical staffing expenses, critical supplies, and critical services. We do not believe there is a scenario based on the fact that we have 2 campuses and need to have an adult who is qualified in every classroom. And certainly, as anyone knows, you need a certain amount of administrators to support the operations. We don't see a scenario in which any further reductions can be made in the moment.
I would like to add one nuance to what Jennifer said, without affecting student services in some meaningful way. So, for example, we could explore cuts to services that Eagle now provides that the community relies on, or further cuts to the SPED program, but those would start to challenge compliance as well as other delivering the services that those students need. As I testified last time, the campuses that we operate have approximately 11% level 3 and 4 SPED. So that's where a lot of our costs come from, as well as as Jennifer testified at the last hearing, if we were starting out with a clean slate, which I understand we're not, and I'm not saying that we are, we would have more avenues to explore, but that's not where we're at today. And we have to come through several of the leases and other aspects of the lack of right sizing as early as it should have been done.
Okay. My final question, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues. And this too may be considered a rhetorical question, but I would really like a response. This situation that we're in is incredibly unfortunate. And this is unfortunate for a school that literally is 10 minutes away from me. And in my work in the city for the last, I can't believe I'm saying this, but almost 2 decades now, I understood what the promise of Eagle brought to the community. And I understood, and we've heard compelling testimony from parents around just what the school means. For the record, I really want to understand. I get all of what's possible with respect to if this doesn't go on, or if this isn't passed, but where was the diligence months ago when you all suspected an issue? Where was the let's figure this out, let's get creative? And I'm speaking to the Eagle team. This is absolutely unconscionable and absolutely mind-blowing, quite frankly, that we have to be here a week before school starts. So that is my question to you all, again, for the record. Where was this diligence months ago?
So I share your view of the unfortunate situation that we're in. 100% agree. And ultimately, it is the board's responsibility. And we, as I said in my testimony last week, 100% agree. As far as the diligence, the Eagle board, as well as the school leaders and particularly Jennifer Leonard, have had diligence for many, many months. And we were exploring every opportunity that we could to keep the school open relative to, as I said in my testimony last week, creating an entirely new bottom up as far as staffing, identifying what those critical positions were, figuring out everywhere we could get with grants, as well as addressing cost cutting with contracts. We worked diligently with PCSB staff to identify what a to ensure that there were no holes in our budget. And we appreciate their tireless efforts to help us and many, many, many hours, as well as working with FundEd. Where the diligence wasn't, and when we could have averted where we are today, is a year ago, when we were not burdened with the fact that we carried on with low enrollment, but had not right-sized the organization. And we built up, as I said, it's last week, it's enrollment and the fact that our operating costs did not shrink with enrollment for some time. And that has put us in this position. And finally, I'd like to say to your question, as soon as it became clear that there wasn't a confident road to keep the school open ourselves, we worked very quickly to identify the right partner. And we think we found that partner and worked very quickly and tirelessly to submit the proposal you have before you for a vote today.
Chairwoman Cruzy, no further questions.
Thank you, Secretary. Board Member Stanley Beatty, I think you have the next question.
Thank you, Chair Cruzy. Yeah, I just have one question for the Eagle team, and this is about your financing. Ms. Brantley talked about conversations that you all have had, I'm assuming jointly, with the lender that holds your leasehold. I would like to hear about conversations that you've had with your lenders to the extent that there are liabilities that will not be assumed in this proposed agreement. I'd like to hear about conversations that you're having with your lenders about those liabilities, particularly given what has been put on the public record.
So, Ms. Stanley Beatty, if I can make sure I understand your question, we have one lender, John Marshall Bank.
Okay.
And so the conversation has been around under what circumstances and terms could Friendship acquire the loan, or at least it'd be transferred or assigned to them. We don't have any other liabilities with lenders in the moment.
Okay, that was my question. So all you have with lenders is the leasehold?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so there is nothing that is excluded in terms of creditors in the asset agreement or in the asset acquisition agreement? Is it a verbiage piece? Are you, when you say with lenders, are you interchanging that with creditors? What's the distinction that you're making?
So when you say lenders, I'm just referring to a bank. We do have creditors, and any liabilities incurred by Eagle up and through the date, even if and when the public charter school board approves the acquisition, then Eagle Academy would be liable for. And so what would be excluded from that, for example, is the central office building. So we have an agreement with Piedmont Realty. It is not an acquisition component that Friendship would acquire because they don't need the office. And so it would be Eagle's responsibility to terminate the lease and work that out with Piedmont Realty.
So then let me ask you the question a different way, so that my nomenclature is appropriate. What conversations have you had with your creditors about liabilities that will not go into, or that will not be a part of this proposed asset acquisition? given what has been put on the public record?
Sure. So if you mean for things like healthcare insurance, we haven't notified them because we didn't want to confuse them. I would notify them immediately effective tomorrow that we are terminating health insurance benefits for our population, but we would obviously be responsible for any insurance payments due up until the date that Friendship would acquire our staff members. If you're thinking about what else? All of our outstanding bills, we have every intention of honoring those, and so we haven't felt the need to communicate with them. The areas where we've been more like forthcoming in planning are things like business insurance, so that we wouldn't pay out for the entire year and instead of paying monthly, so it would be easier to recoup any overpayments or quickly make any payment adjustments needed to be made. Is there anything in particular that you're thinking about that I could address for you?
I wanted you to do what you did. So it's my understanding that you categorize lenders separate from creditors, which I understand. Like I said, sometimes it could be a nomenclature thing. So you categorize lenders separate from creditors, which I get. And you have said clearly that you've had conversations with your lender about a path forward. And I appreciate that. And Ms. Brantley talked about that. I was specifically getting to and yet let's use the term liabilities because perhaps that's easier. I was specifically getting to any liabilities that might be left behind. And it sounds like, and I say left behind, that's not a financial term, but any liabilities that might not be included. And it sounds like you have thought about it. I heard you talk about insurance. I heard you talk about some other things. So it sounds like you guys have thought about it. What I'm really trying to get to is back to somewhat to what Treasurer Wright was saying in terms of the sort of the planning and the forethought here, given where we find ourselves. If asset acquisition, oh, look at what I did. If asset acquisition is not a viable path, and that's just an if it isn't, I'm trying to tease out what your plan is going forward. I'm trying to tease that out. And it would seem to me that outside of your lender, that's specific to your leasehold, which I know has been the center of a lot of conversation here, there are other liabilities that I'm trying to understand what your thought process has gone into in terms of dissolving those relationships appropriately, particularly, like I said, given all that has been put on the record. That's what I'm trying to get to. And I said, board member, right, I meant, I was talking about, Shakura, your points about how we found ourselves here.
Sure. And so to clarify, if there is an asset acquisition, then you're asking what liabilities would we still be responsible for and what communication's been had?
What communications have been had and what thought have you put into the dissolution of those liabilities?
Absolutely. And so one of the things that has been top of mind for all of us, I think, since the beginning is SPED contractors, because they are critical to making sure that our students are served on day one. So they are all on notice that if and when the Friendship Public Charter School acquisition is approved, that Friendship will be responsible for making sure that student services are provided. If it's not approved, we also have renewal contracts in place that can be used in the event we need those contracted SPED services. We're not obligated to use them, and they're all contracts that would be renewed, so therefore we don't need to go through an RFP process. When we go through things like utilities, those are companies and organizations we don't need to notify in advance. But trust me, if you all approve it, first thing tomorrow morning, I'm going through every single one of our bills in QuickBooks and going from largest to smallest liability. Who do we cancel first? With health insurance being at the top. It is our largest monthly liability. I think I heard you also asking, what do we do in the event that we need to move forward? Did I hear you asking that, or did I misunderstand?
In the context of addressing those liabilities, yes, in that context, that's correct.
Yeah. And I also went through everything on the accounts payable balance recently. And anything that was a significant amount, and when I say significant, I mean $10,000 or more, I figured out if we need to pay it, by when do we need to pay it, or been in communication. So for example, we owed over $81,000 to a law firm. Last week, I got on the phone with them, negotiated to pay $40,000, agreed that it'd be paid by this coming Friday. Another large outstanding balance was $92,000 to OSSI for NSLP charges in 2022. I've reached out to Daria Morales to understand what that charge is and do we still owe it? Because I don't have any information regarding that. The next largest one is $25,000 to our accounting firm, but they haven't closed out the FY23 audit yet. So therefore, I am not willing to pay that until we've closed it out. So those are our largest liabilities. And after that, they get a lot smaller. But in my mind and on my internal spreadsheet, I am very clear on how we're going to pay everything and have already, with the help of our EdOps team, made sure that we have the cash balance to make sure that we pay all of our liabilities and still have some funds for wind down.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking
for.
All
right, thank you.
There together.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yes, and we have budgeted funds for wind down, including accounting services, the audit for FY24, legal fees. We also know that things come out of the woodwork, and so I've built in some cushion for that as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Cruzy. I'm done.
Thank you for that.
Chair Cruzy, if I could just answer the question on the lease, page 20, section 15.01E says, notwithstanding anything to the contrary contained herein, tenant may sublease up to 25% of the floor area of any buildings now or thereafter without the landlord's approval. And so I'll happily send that screenshot to the staff if you all would like to look at it further.
And
yes,
Chair
please send that to me or to the yes.
Thanks, Chair Cruzy. Ms. Brantley beat me to what I was going to share. First is that we did not assess the particular scenario that Ms. Brantley shared tonight, but it is our understanding that under certain circumstances, Eagle can sublet that facility. And I did up to a certain portion, and I wanted to make that clarification just because you will have an agenda item before you tonight of Eagle leasing space to community college prep. So I wanted to make sure that that was clarified as you consider that later agenda item. But we will get that language in front of our board, but it is our understanding that there is a proviso for that, for a portion of the building without consent.
Okay, and clarify for me again, Ms. Brantley, is 25% of any floor?
It's 25% of any building.
Okay.
The main building, then they built an addition next to it.
Okay, and so to be clear, in this case, you would be running more than 25% of that building?
No, not necessarily. There are some portions of it that are UPO, and there are some portions that I understand you will vote on later tonight that will be community college prep. But quite frankly, the number of students that they have, it doesn't make it efficient to operate the entire building.
So you're saying you can operate the two whatever that's at that particular building in less than 25% of the whole building and still operate the level of programming they're saying they've operated, et cetera. Okay. My next question is to Jennifer. One of the things that you stated in terms of, I'm sorry, thank you, Pat. Ms. Brantley, one of the things that you shared with me, was, I want you to clarify for me again. You were talking about being below 22 students and you said 32,000 per student. So one, I'm assuming to get to that number, you are assuming that all 22 of them are going to be a certain level of special education and or at risk, because where do you get 32,000 per student when our per pupil doesn't give you that?
Great question. So it's an average. So it doesn't assume that any one student is of a certain profile. When you take our 375 students with the projected SPED enrollment that we have right now and our projected at risk, and of course with the facilities funding, given the number of level 3s and 4s that we have, our average is pretty high. per pupil, all told. And so we would say.
Okay, so I get that. So I just want to make sure that as we're talking, we are putting all of that out, because to say $32,000 per student, number one, the district doesn't cover $32,000 per student as part of your per pupil, and we should be running schools, right? We should be. So I just want us to be careful with the language. The other thing that you shared in terms of thinking about where you've made cuts or not made cuts, you talked about the number of having quality adults in front of children. When I went over your staffing numbers last week, you got me to 88 staff members. Only 30 of them were in the actual classroom. I definitely understand and have run schools, so I know that there's additional support that comes and goes to classrooms. But for you to have 30 classroom teachers among 2 buildings and to still need the other, what if I'm doing my 58 staff members and say that you can't cut. I think, again, maybe this is not a question as much as it is a statement. I want to make sure that we're putting out the complete facts, because you're not keeping 88 teachers, you're keeping 88 staff members, 30 of which are teachers. So when you say, like, in terms of cut and you've done this work, I'm going to challenge you that I think you could do more work around expenses as well. And then I also want us to get a clarity around what it looks like, particularly because what it sounds like to me from Mr. Lintner, because you did say this on Wednesday, you have hard decisions to make. And I actually think you had hard decisions to make the minute you took a charter, right? And you went into a community to serve, and every day that you serve those children are hard decisions. But the fact that you haven't really figured out what to do or what you will do, and be able to say that to us in a public way when school is a week away is equally concerning in terms of behavior of this board. And I continue to stay, I will use Shakura's word, dumbfounded, that's what you would say. Tonight, a vote could come that says no, and you are telling me you still got to try to figure it out, but yet the children are so important to you. Like, I just need you to see how that feels from a board's perspective. I take the autonomy, the absolute privilege of autonomy that the school you're talking to has done very well with in terms of autonomy, absolutely done well across this city. Second largest LEA in the city, serving huge populations of children who would not get a proper education, done well with that autonomy. When you don't, there has to be accountability for it, because when we don't give that accountability, it impacts everybody else in the sector, and everybody can't be as big as Friendship and withstand that. So I need you to understand that even the fact that you're telling me tonight you don't know what you would do with this vote, but then you're saying to me in the same breath how much you care about the children and how important the staff is for you and how important these things are for you, and you want us to consider that it actually angers me, because that's how seriously I take. And while Shakura lives 10 blocks, I live up the street from Eagle. I can walk to Eagle. Every day I walk my dogs, I walk past Eagle. So this is my community. I live here. I've worked here. This is what I do. And you don't get to do that in our community. And you don't get to not have a plan as a response to it. I appreciate Friendship and who they've been in the sector and how they show up. But I need you to understand what you are responsible for, and the privilege that you had to work in this community, the privilege that you had to have these families in front of you and give you their most important person every single day and say, educate them. So yes, I'm angry about it. I'm angry about it as a resident. I'm angry about it as a member of this board. So I don't even know. I don't have a question. I needed to be able to say that.
I have a few thoughts, if I might, in response.
You can.
First, Jennifer, do you want to address, or can you address this? We talked about a little last time when you made your comment relative to staffing and student-facing staffing. Do you have it's more than 33 teachers that are direct student-facing staffing. Do you have that, Jennifer?
I apologize. I do not have the staff roster in front of me, and I wanted to be sure that I paid attention instead of started digging.
Well, that was the information that you all sent us on Wednesday when I requested it, when staff requested it. And if you go back on the record, I literally went through all. I said you have 30 classroom teachers. I can pull it back up. This is the information we received from you.
But we don't have 50 staff at the central location, right? A lot of
I
those
didn't say
staff.
that you did. I said you had 30 classroom teachers and 58 other staff members. I don't know where they are. Actually, I recall you telling me that 6 of them were at the central office. I recall that.
So a good fraction of those are, for example, student aides that directly interface with students, particularly SPED education. And if we can get you a more detailed breakdown, if that is something that you desire. With respect to what we are going to do next, as soon as we conclude this meeting, the Eagle board has an emergency board meeting queued up, ready to go to make our decisions. I'm not going to comment publicly on the record for what our decision is going to be before we have made it. And I also share your view that I don't want to be here either. Both of my kids went to Eagle and right past the Congress Heights location. What I'd like to say is as far as the certainty of what the next steps are, we agree with the PCSB staff that partnering with Friendship is a viable option for continuing the education. And taking that step does not take away from accountability of Eagle's board. That step is accountability, and Eagle will cease to exist as Eagle Academy. And we agree with PCSB staff.
Ms. Wright, would you mind if I did provide the breakdown of staff, high level?
Is it different than what you sent us on Wednesday?
I have to be honest, I didn't send it, so I don't know exactly what's in that. And I'm sorry if that doesn't sound appropriately in sync with our staff. So I want to be just forthright and say what I know in the moment is that we have 34 teachers, 10 dedicated aides, 15 paraprofessionals, and 8 special education related service providers. So what do I mean by that? People in the building who are qualified to provide speech therapy and other related services. So if I'm going to do the math really quickly, 23, 33 plus 33 plus 34. So we have 67 of our staff who are directly interfacing and supporting students.
Okay, yeah, that is different what you just sent us on Wednesday. So it's fine.
Apologies for the inconsistency. The other thing I wanted to share, which someone reminded me a few moments ago, and it goes back to Ms. Stanley Beatty's question. I'm very happy to say that our largest outstanding liability, as I was running through all our payables last week, was $92,000, because before that, we had a very high number of very high dollar outstanding liabilities, which I paid off as soon as I was able to back in July. So for example, we had a $1.15 million line of credit that was due to John Marshall Bank. We have paid that off. We had a $250,000 line of credit due to Bill.com. We have paid that off. We had many outstanding liabilities due to related service providers, food service providers, and others. So we don't have any outstanding liabilities past what has been incurred since about July 15th. We are completely up to date on all of our liabilities, except for with the agreement of a rent agreement in which we had an agreement with our realtor to have some deferred rent with the remaining balance paid off later in the fall. So we are currently up to date on any outstanding liabilities. There's nothing that is late. There is nothing other than the rent deferred payment that we've negotiated to pay later.
Thank you. Board Member Stanley Beatty, I believe you have the next question.
Thank you. Ms. Leonard, I have another question, but with regards to the lines of credit that you said were paid, just for clarification, the lines are paid and closed?
So we have a running line of credit with Bill.com. So we have the ability to draw on it again if we need to, but there's no outstanding balance right now. The line of credit with John Marshall Bank, we have fully paid off. And unless they authorized us to draw down on that or gave us another line of credit, we can't rely on it in the moment. It would have had to be renewed in the beginning of August.
That's what I'm asking you. Okay, yes. So the line with John Marshall is it's a tantamount to close. They didn't renew it.
Correct. It's not technically closed, but it hasn't been renewed. That's a great way to put it.
And then you have another facility that you've paid off that essentially you bought to a zero balance, but that balance is available for you to redraw.
That is correct.
I understand. Okay, thank you. Chair Cruzy, my last question is just for staff. And I think it's important, given some of the public comment that we've received, to have staff take a moment to just talk about asset acquisitions in general and what is allowed in terms of engagement between two LEAs while an agreement is being deliberated, discussed, negotiated prior to the board actually approving that agreement.
Thank you, Board Member Stanley Beatty. I believe I understand your question, but if I don't give a fulsome response, please let me know. So I do want to point out that as we all have discussed, this asset acquisition consideration is happening on a much more accelerated timeline than we've had in the past. But typically when there is an asset acquisition being considered, the LEAs involved will work together to come up with an agreement around what are the assets and liabilities that are a part of that agreement. Primarily, there has to be a plan for assuming all of the students associated with the school, and there has to be a plan for at least giving an opportunity to the employees of the school that is going to no longer be in existence to have an opportunity to work at the new school. It does not mean that employment is required, but an opportunity to seek an interview and to have a chance at being in the new LEA is offered. Outside of that, there aren't hard and fast rules about what that asset acquisition needs to include, but our team would review the documents for legal sufficiency. We will review whether or not there is a plan for the students, whether or not there is an opportunity for staff to have a position in the other LEA, assuming that it works, and whether or not all of the appropriate supporting documents accompany the agreement. And typically that process is happening over a much longer period of time. And again, similar to the instance that we're talking about right now, none of this becomes official and legal until all of the necessary reviews and signatures are in place. So that is a very high level summary of that process. Again, this is a mechanism that is available to schools to consider when they are contemplating instances such as this or other instances where they may no longer be in a position to continue.
Dr. Walker Davis, can you speak about what it also allows for in terms of the LEAs starting to work with each other? As you mentioned, I know in this particular situation, time has been truncated, and so there was work done that perhaps may have been out of sequence in any other situation because of the timing. But again, I'm asking the question because of public comment. In this particular case, and I don't want to misquote her, but I'll give you an example. For example, I think I remember Ms. Brantley commenting that Friendship had started to train some of the Eagle teachers. I don't want to misquote her, but there was a comment about Eagle teachers or Friendship staff already sort of working with Eagle staff in some capacity as it relates to curriculum and Ms. Brantley, don't let me misquote you, but I thought there was something that you mentioned about working with Eagle staff and introducing your curriculum to them or perhaps incorporating the curriculum. That's the part that I'm trying to get to, Dr. Walker Davis, that those types of things to some extent that I'm assuming is overseen by the PCSB, that is allowed before the actual asset acquisition agreement is approved.
Ms. Brantley, if you want to describe what you shared, you can. And
oh, sure, absolutely. I shared that we have reviewed the curriculum that's used by Eagle. They use a similar math curriculum, but not a reading one. And that we would not change curriculum right away. It would take a year or so of training in order to do so, to switch to the appropriate reading training. You should be aware, though, that we did offer for their staff, if they wanted to attend Friendships opening PD that we do at the convention center. And we often do have people from other places who do attend it because it's a very large PD. That we use many of the things people use from around the city, so other people will come to it. That sort of is what we have done. And I also apologize. I neglected to introduce Dylan Groover, who is the head of HR for Friendship, who is on if there are any particular questions for him. And we have another parent board member, Anise Walker, who is also on, or now an alumni parent. But to that end, in terms of thinking about screening Eagle staff, we have done that and made offers that were provisioned on us getting approval for the asset acquisition.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, Ms. Brantley. That Dr. Walker Davis, that's what I wanted to make available for public consumption, that those types of practices are allowable and okay. As two LEAs are contemplating an asset acquisition or asset acquisition agreement, you know what I'm trying to say, within the four corners of what we have currently as it relates to policies and procedures, that those practices are okay.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Stanley Beatty. Yes, they are okay, and they are expected that employees at the school that is contemplating asset acquisition would have an understanding of, if they are provided an offer at the new LEA, what they are signing up for, what the expectations of that school would be. We would expect that the LEA who is pursuing the asset acquisition would be engaging families on what that programmatic offering would be, whether it would be the same or the extent to which it would be different. Those are all activities that we would expect the two LEAs to be engaged in. And again, I do want to point out that this is a more accelerated timeline than we've done in the past. And so it may feel to some that this is happening certainly more quickly than they anticipated, but we would expect the level of engagement on those activities that we are hearing has happened, at least from the Friendship side. And we would also expect a lot of communication from the school that is pursuing the asset acquisition about what the various options for families would be.
Thank you for that, Chair Cruzy. I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Board members, I think I'm going to read, Board Member Nick Rodriguez is unable to be here this evening. I understand he is watching the live stream, but he has provided a proxy vote. He's also asked for me to read some remarks from him. I'm going to transition to that. So again, I am reading printed out remarks that I have from a board member. These are not my own. I will be voting yes on today's asset acquisition. In my absence from the meeting, I would like to briefly explain my reasoning. Thank you to my board colleagues for reading this into the record for me. There are many things that are not ideal about this proposal, the timeline in particular, as we have discussed. Normally, we have several months for this process to play out. Now, because the issues with Eagle came to light in midsummer, we are trying to do it all in a matter of weeks. Nonetheless, I think it is right that we are considering this. If there is a chance that we can avoid a mid-year school closure for the sake of Eagle families and students, I think we are morally obligated to at least consider it. I've heard a lot of thoughtful debate from my colleagues on this. It feels that there are a few key principles in play here. First, the need for serious accountability for what has happened to Eagle. I completely agree with this. I believe it can be accomplished in a number of ways, whether through a relinquishment or a revocation of the school's charter. Whether there is an asset acquisition after that is, to me, a separate question. The point is that the current board and leadership of the school should no longer be leading the school. In my mind, that is accountability, and any of the options we are considering would accomplish that. Second, the need to care for Eagle families and students. This one weighs the most heavily on me. None of this is their fault. The malfeasance, the fiscal mismanagement, the timing, none of it. We must do right by them. In my mind, that means minimizing disruption to the extent we can, and giving students and families a high-quality option or options on the other side of this. With these two considerations in mind, I was and am very sympathetic to the proposal. The fast timeline is an attempt to maintain that stability for families and to accomplish both accountability for Eagle and a solution for families before the start of the school year. And Friendship, while not perfect, is a strong option with a track record of delivering for the students they serve. And for individuals and families who do not like being transferred to Friendship without having a say in this, the options and choices before them are at least as good as they would be in the opposite case, if there were simply a mid-year closure and those students and families had to look elsewhere. They would always be free to look for another school, whether or not the asset acquisition happened. However, it is clear that the board does not agree with me on this, and I understand why. There are two other considerations at play here. First, the need to responsibly manage the charter sector and its size. I know that there are concerns about oversaturation of the charter school market, especially east of the river. This proposal does not reduce the total number of seats authorized in this area. There were 920 seats for Eagle, and there would be only 508 if Friendship acquires them. Nonetheless, it is still true that we are looking at declining enrollment in the district and lots of options available. Second, the need to ensure a fair process for what to do after Eagle Academy's charter is no longer in effect. This is where the facts before us are even more concerning. This has been a really fast process, and as such, there are questions about why it is Friendship and not someone else. The opportunity for community engagement has been far more limited than I would like to see. There is no one answer to this, which is that the process for asset acquisition, such as it is not as well defined as some of the other things we have defined in policy. It is a bit of a unique set of agreements between two consenting LEAs every time it happens. Broadly speaking, this situation has caused me to reflect on our policy around asset acquisitions and to wish that it was stronger and better defined. In an ideal world, when it is time to close a school, a few things would happen. There would be a process for determining whether an asset acquisition is appropriate from a sector planning standpoint. There would be some kind of process for determining, on the basis of capacity and performance, which LEA is the best candidate for that. An RFP is one example of this. The board's vote then could consider all of that information and vote together on it, rather than the piecemeal steps of relinquishment or revocation and then a few amendments to charters around enrollment ceilings and facilities. Regardless of the outcome of this case, I'd respectfully ask PCSB staff, as we do sector planning, to consider all of this as we developed our new sector planning policy. We don't have that policy today. And I am not a fan of making new policy in the context of a specific case before us. For that reason, approving this asset acquisition is consistent with current policy, such as it is, and I'm confident the staff has done their homework on it. It is a close call, but when I weigh it all out, the consideration for current Eagle students and families is a tiebreaker for me, so I am inclined to support this proposal. At the same time, I'm fairly sure that my views are not the majority of this board's views, and therefore it is unlikely that this asset acquisition will be approved today. Again, I respect the reasoning of my colleagues for voting differently. My hope in the aftermath, given what we know about the untenable situation at Eagle, is that we get to a relinquishment or revocation of the charter as soon as possible. And then after that, we get into a process to quickly determine whether an asset acquisition is desirable and feasible, and if so, an open process to invite any LEA, including Friendship, to apply. This alongside a plan for transition that protects families and ensures they have a good experience in this school year and beyond. I cast my vote today with the hope that if the asset acquisition is not approved, my colleagues will want to take these steps next in the interest of the students and families we're all concerned about. I appreciate all of the points that all of them and many other stakeholders have raised. They've made me think hard about this. And I hope we can move forward quickly after this to resolve some of these issues, which will become more urgent as the school year begins. Again, these comments came from board member Nick Rodriguez. I will continue as I invite other board members to let me know who would like to speak next. And this time I'm speaking on my own behalf. I will be voting against the proposal this evening. My remarks are a bit briefer than Nick's. This has been a decision that I have not taken lightly, with countless hours reviewing testimony, data, past precedent, and our authority, and our first principles, that every DC student receives a quality education that makes them feel valued and prepares them for lifelong learning, a fulfilling career, and economic stability. We do that by creating the policies and conditions that empower teachers and school leaders to do their best work, and that's educating students. My decision not to approve this proposal has been informed by the full range of voices and information about the specific and broader context, which includes powerful statements from families. This evening, letters not read aloud, but received from those who have made the intentional choice to enroll their child at Eagle and who put their trust in that school's board to ensure their child would receive the academic instruction they need to thrive and grow. Eagle does not appear to be financially viable, and while the pathway of asset acquisition can and has demonstrated to be a viable path for some schools, based on data I reviewed on enrollment patterns and demands, I cannot approve this as a sustainable path right now for the Eagle school community or for its prospect as part of the larger Friendship network. I know this would be difficult for Eagle families and staff, as well as perhaps those at Friendship who have been supporting a possible acquisition. I am touched by the many letters we've received from Eagle families, and I want staff to know that you are appreciated and you've made a difference in children's lives. I also want to be clear that I appreciate that and how Friendship has participated to pursue this possibility. Uncertainty can be confusing and very unsettling. I'm committed, if this does not move forward, to work with our staff and partners to support the school community for whatever happens next, expeditiously and with a commitment to quality learning environments. Your children's educational journeys matter. For other LEA school leaders and board members listening this evening, I encourage you to engage actively and proactively in service to the school communities you serve. For the public, I want to acknowledge just how much of this evening's and so often every board meeting's agenda has something to do with facilities, whether accessing or operating. I know that all of us are working together in service to the well-being, the thriving and long-term success of every student of this district, whatever school they attend. So I trust that resources in service and treasure are real and made available so that time and energy is prioritized on high-quality instruction. Thank you. And I'm inviting board member Stanley Beatty to speak next.
Thank you, Chair Cruzy. These are my comments as well. Chair Cruzy and fellow board members, I will be voting no on the asset acquisition proposal before us tonight. To be clear, my vote is not against Friendship Public Charter School, but rather it is a vote for a complete process of accountability for Eagle and for both real and perceived transparency into this process and into our system. I recognize the proposed asset acquisition is a potential pathway to a resolution. I just don't think it's the best pathway. I do not believe that this particular asset acquisition allows for full accountability. To be frank, I challenge a practice that allows any LEA that has committed financial missteps and that is no longer viable to decide how or even if it will choose to dissolve itself. That such a practice exists is difficult for me to reconcile. Further, I am not convinced that this proposal is aligned with any broader strategy as it relates to the DC public charter school system. For example, we know enrollment is declining. We also know that in this particular situation, there are at least 11 existing LEAs within a 1-mile radius of Eagle's southeast location, and that many of those LEAs, if not all, are currently under-enrolled. What implications would the asset acquisition have on those existing LEAs? What is the DC public school landscape in this neighborhood in 5 years or in 10 years? How will decisions that we make tonight shape conditions we may need to address in the future? I understand there is a precedent for asset acquisitions as a tool. However, there should also be specific policies and procedures that evaluate if, when, and how that tool is to be used. Those policies and procedures should triage the acquired LEA and impose PCSB oversight of the proposed acquiring partner and the terms of the asset agreement. We should also be engaging in a broader conversation about how asset acquisitions affect the entire DC charter landscape. The board will continue to face hard and complicated decisions, especially given challenging dynamics and shifting demographics. We should do so from a strategic perspective with a focus on who we want to be. Tools should serve our decisions, not drive them. And when we find that time is not on our side, we should resist the urge to acquiesce to the solution of least resistance. I want to thank my fellow board members. We have robustly discussed this issue with integrity and compassion, and I respect each of you and your opinions, and I look forward to continuing to do this very hard work with each of you. Thank you, Chair Cruzy.
Thank you, Board Member Sanu-Beatty. Next, Vice Chair Sandman.
I agree with everything my colleague, Board Member Rodriguez said. I will not repeat what he said. We have limited options available to us because of the late disclosure of the severity of Eagle's financial problems. We don't have any great options here. To me, this is an exercise in comparing the options that we do have as a matter of practicality. And in making that comparison, I look at three considerations. The first is which of the options offers the highest level of certainty and predictability about outcomes? Where do we have the most information about what is likely to happen as a result of the decision we make? Second, what would be in the best interests of the families at Eagle? What would be the consequences of each of the options to them in terms of things like stability, continuity of education, ease of navigation of a transition? And third, what is in the best interests of the people of the District of Columbia? Our obligation as a board is not just to the families of Eagle, it is to the people of the District of Columbia. On each of these considerations, I think that the asset acquisition has the advantage. I think that the asset acquisition offers the most predictable outcome here. The only thing that's uncertain to me is the disposition of the lease, ensuring that the facility is available that is critical to the contemplated transaction here. That has not been resolved, but from what I've heard tonight about what DGS has done in the past under comparable circumstances, I think this is better than the alternative that I'm considering, that we're considering. Second, what would be in the best interests of the families of Eagle? My personal assessment is that this is devastating for the families of Eagle. I can't imagine what they're going to be feeling tomorrow. I think that the smooth transition that Friendship has offered here is the best of the limited options that are available to those families. And third, what is in the best interests of the people of the District of Columbia? I have no idea what happens after this, what next week looks like, what next month looks like, what October looks like. I heard tonight that we might be looking at an expenditure of $500,000 to $1 million of DC taxpayer money to continue the operation of the school, to enable some transition to something else that I don't know what it is. I think we can save that expenditure and provide some certainty. I think the people of the District of Columbia have an interest in knowing that when a school has to close or a transition is necessary, there is going to be a stable, orderly transition that looks out for the interests of the families that have invested in the school that's disappearing. I'm going to vote in favor of this acquisition.
Thank you, Vice Chair Sandman. Secretary Shakura Adamafani.
We gathered here today to make this very crucial decision about the asset acquisition request. I'd like to explain why I'll be voting no. First and foremost, our responsibility is to ensure that every family in our community, especially families from our most under-resourced communities, maintain and have access to a wide range of educational opportunities. Providing more choices empowers parents to select the best learning environment for their child's unique needs, truly demonstrating care for Eagle families. As you've heard tonight, there are resources available to minimize the impact of disruption and to slow the rushing through the asset acquisition process. Slowing the rushing of the asset acquisition process would ensure that we are able to lay before the families at Eagle as many options as possible. Secondly, I urge us not to let the speed of decision-making overshadow the potential for creative problem solving. Acting quickly is tempting, but doing so might cause us to miss out on an innovative solution that will uphold and even enhance the range of choices available to that community. We must remain patient, ensuring our decisions today don't inadvertently close off opportunities for the future. By voting no, I reaffirm my unwavering commitment to the promises that defines the DC Charter School movement: choice, opportunity, and ultimately the best possible outcomes for every child. Let's take the time to thoroughly explore all options and make decisions that genuinely benefit the families, strengthening our alignment and connection to the values that I stated above. Lastly, to the Eagle families, I want to assure you that should the vote of no go through tonight, this does not mean that your school will close immediately. We understand your concerns and want to reassure you that if the asset acquisition doesn't pass, Eagle Academy will continue to operate as usual for the moment. Hopefully, this provides a sense of security and confidence as we work to figure out, should it not pass, as we work to figure out what happens next.
Thank you, Secretary Emafanian. Treasurer Wright.
I will be voting no on tonight's proposed asset acquisition, and I would like to explain why for the record. This is not about Friendship Public Charter Schools. I respect the work of Friendship and Pat Brentley tremendously. She's a highly respected leader in the work, and I've had the privilege of working beside her for many years. My vote of no is indeed a clear vote for ensuring the accountability we must hold sacred as an authorizer. I believe we have conflated our obligation under the School Reform Act to address Eagle's fiscal mismanagement, which we made on Wednesday a request to initiate a case for charter revocation. I believe we conflated that obligation with the LEA's desire to enter into an acquisition prior to the start of the school year. The two are distinct issues and should not be dealt with concurrently. Eagle Academy has demonstrated a level of fiscal mismanagement that I believe warrants a level of accountability that only this board can implement and has an obligation to implement. We have asked the staff to initiate a case for revocation, and I believe the issue needs to be addressed prior to approving any potential asset acquisition. Further, as my peers have stated, I do not believe that the asset acquisition in this case is the best path forward. As a former charter school leader, I understand that this practice has been part of the sector for years now. I had a problem with it then, and I have a problem with it now. Now that I sit on the board and have the ability to influence its application, that is what I'm going to do. My issue with asset acquisition in this case is I do not agree that a school should be allowed to abuse its granted autonomy at the level and the longevity of fiscal mismanagement Eagle has demonstrated and publicly shared with us on Wednesday, and then turn around and be able to unilaterally decide what the response to that inappropriate behavior should be. That is what is happening here by requesting an asset acquisition at this point. Our system should not allow a failing LEA to decide what is the appropriate response to its behavior, regardless of the time of year. I acknowledge Friendship's willingness to come to the table, as it has done before, and support Eagle's families, but I am not convinced that an asset acquisition in this case is the best option for a number of reasons. Number one, I believe the unintended consequence of the current asset acquisition policy practice because it's the practice that is an issue for me, not the policy. The way it plays out can only be a circumvention of true accountability, as I stated above. Second, I do not believe that there's been an open and transparent process around this proposal. As a Ward A resident who lives less than 5 minutes from Eagle, the potential stifling of a marginalized community, my community voice, is gravely concerning to me. We have heard tonight that parents believe we, the charter board, are closing Eagle. They also believe that the staff and the programming of Eagle Academy will remain for years. This indicates to me that parents have not been fully informed about what is truly being proposed. Eagle Academy is proposing to relinquish its charter and have the school acquired by Friendship. Number 3, as shared by other colleagues, this is an already saturated part of the city with a lack of diversity in program offerings. Friendship is already serving the community. To move Friendship, the second largest charter school network, blocks away from its already current 3 campuses and directly across the street from the largest charter school network, KIPP, will continue to impact the already saturated market. I am hereby formally requesting that the staff of DC Public Charter School Board revisit our asset acquisition policy in its entirety, specifically as it relates to the transparency of the process, ensuring parent, community, and public voice, just as we do in reviewing a new charter school application, is heard. And equally important as it relates to the ability of a failing LEA to implement an asset acquisition at its own discretion and with unilateral decision-making of the acquirer. I want to be clear, I don't have a problem with an asset acquisition at a certain point of the year if the school is not in trouble and if it needs to use it to provide support. But once you violate the autonomy that is given to you, you do not get to decide, in my opinion. Just because something has been done in the past does not mean it should continue in the future. And we can all think of things that went on in the past that should not continue in the future and don't continue in the future. My request is not to change the process of asset acquisition. It is to change the practice of how we implement the asset acquisition process, that we provide absolute clarity where there is opaqueness. The landscape is different. And just like we are reevaluated our accountability system with Aspire, we need to reevaluate this process. Eagle has stated that they will not relinquish, but they also stated here and publicly Wednesday that they can't operate the schools if the asset acquisition is not approved. They'd have a, quote, hard decision to make. I want to make sure we understand we have been in this sector for over almost 30-something years now in terms of charter. We have been here before. If you do relinquish, we make families full aware of all their options, which we should have done regardless of the asset acquisition. There should have been laptops out for families to enroll in other schools. They should have known what their options were, and we have received feedback that they weren't given that information. PCSB staff could reach out to all the LEAs in the district, not just those in the neighborhood, serving grades pre-K through 3rd, to inquire if they have open seats and invite them to enroll, invite them to either an enrollment fair where families can learn about all the options, or how their children can enroll students on site and prepare for them to be ready to start school right away. Eagle said on Wednesday, when explicitly asked by me if they had students in fully enrolled, they said they did, so the paperwork should already be collected. And as a former school leader, I know exactly how it works. I believe we have allowed the pressures of the start of school year to cloud our perspectives. We continue to use the students and families of Eagle Academy and the start of the school as a reason we are moving so fast. As I shared on Wednesday, as I said earlier, I wish this concern for Eagle families was something that the Eagle leadership held as sacred each and every day that you had the absolute privilege of entering my community and educating children.
Thank you, Treasurer Wright. Board Member Davis.
Yes, I've listened intently to my colleagues and they've made excellent points. Carissa discussed the saturation of the community, the decrease in enrollment, amongst other issues. I share Treasurer Wright's sense of disappointment and outrage about how this situation has unfolded. For me, I think about how schools function, how schools work. And the one thing that I know for sure is that the situation that Eagle finds itself in, it didn't happen in June, it didn't happen in July, but this is a result of many months of decisions. And at the heart of it is we have many children who have potentially lost months of instruction because maybe adults are concerned about their employment. Maybe they have other things that they're thinking about. And so since from March of last year, throughout the summer, children and families have been concerned and worried about what this next school year will bring. And so they've lost out. They lost out on instruction. And I feel that we have a responsibility to ensure that the children have the best that we can offer them, because school starts next week. And so for me, I'm in favor of the acquisition because we will be providing the students and the families with an option, an option within this, potentially within the same school, within the same community that they need. You know, we are basically, without the acquisition, we're sending students into a school that we know will fail. No child deserves that. Children need stability. And the implications for this will be seen 3, 4, 5 years down the line. And for me, I think, you know, my vote is for the acquisition because it centers the needs of the children. And you know, again, I hear and there's so many poignant points made in both areas, but for me, I think the acquisition is something that is desperately needed.
Thank you, Board Member Davis. Colleagues, I will now entertain a motion.
I move to deny the asset acquisition of Eagle Academy Public Charter School and the corresponding charter amendment request of Friendship Public Charter School.
I second.
Secretary Adamafani, you do have the proxy vote from Board Member Rodriguez available?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Would you call a roll call vote with that in hand?
Okay. Chairwoman Cruzy.
Sometimes these motions can get confusing. So this is an aye is a move to deny the asset acquisition. With that in mind, I'm an aye.
Vice Chairman Salmon.
No.
Treasurer Wright.
Aye.
Board Member Stanley Beatty.
Thank you for clarifying that, Chair Cruzy. I am an aye to deny.
Board Member Davis.
I'm a no to approve.
Board Member Rodriguez by proxy, based on his vote, he is a no. And I am an aye.
My count, There are 4 ayes, 3 noes, which means that the ayes have it, and this proposal has been denied. I don't believe there's a whole lot more than we can say other than to express our enormous gratitude to all those here tonight, to express our appreciation. And I think every board member here has expressed our awareness that there may be many, many families who are very disappointed tonight. We stand by to support for whatever comes next. Dr. Walker Davis.
Chair Cruzy, at the board's request and based on the discussion during the public hearing last week and tonight's meeting, DCPCSB staff will begin the work to evaluate whether to initiate revocation of Eagle Academy Public Charter School under the School Reform Act. Before I go into the steps of a potential revocation process, I do want to say something to the students, families, and staff of the Eagle Academy Public Charter School. To the Eagle community, and that means the students, their families, and the Eagle employees, I want to acknowledge that this has been a difficult and stressful process and not one of your making. I know that you have been through a lot, and this has not been easy for you. We want to be sure that you have the information and stay informed about the next steps. So we will create a special webpage for you that will keep you up to date on the process. The page will be available on our homepage of our website tomorrow, and it will be updated with new information as it is received. Now, I want to outline the process going forward. The first step in this process is that the board this board holding a special meeting to decide whether to formally initiate revocation proceedings based on a comprehensive analysis and recommendation from staff. We seek to schedule that vote as soon as possible. From there, if the board votes to initiate revocation, the law lays out specific process that we will follow, which includes a public hearing if the school requests one, and a final vote where this board will decide whether the school has met the standard for its charter to be revoked. We will move forward with this process as quickly as possible to provide clarity for students and families while balancing the need to follow the requirements under the law to ensure our process is fair and accurate. In closing, I want to emphasize that we take our responsibility as an authorizer seriously, and I want to emphasize that we understand the pain and uncertainty that the Eagle community, that's its students, families, and staff may be feeling right now. I also want to encourage you to stay informed as we update information and to name that we expect Eagle Academy's leadership to provide you with information too. And to the PCSB board, your requests regarding staff evaluation and assessment of our sector planning policies and practices have been received.
Thank you, Walker Davis.
Dr. Walker Davis. I'm going to call for a short bio break. It is 9:37 right now. I'd like to invite everybody back up at 9:43. And Melody will be joining us for that. See you in a moment. Good evening. I see that we have a quorum. I'm inviting back Melody Sampson to introduce the charter amendment request from Maya Angelou Public Charter School. And when she is done with that introduction, I will be inviting representatives from the school to provide remarks. We've got a number of folks coming. I'll have them introduce themselves.
DC PCSB staff recommends that its board approve the charter agreement amendment request from Maya Angelou Public Charter School. The school seeks to revise its mission statement and expand the eligibility criteria for Maya Angelou High School's existing virtual program. Following the public hearing in May 2024, the school has further revised its mission statement to ensure inclusivity, and it refined its virtual program eligibility criteria. In particular, the school explained how it will monitor students enrolled in the virtual program for safety-related reasons and prioritize their return to full-time in-person instruction. Leaders from the school are here to answer your questions.
Good evening. Thanks, Melody. Good evening, Chair Crucy and members of the Public Charter School Board. I'm Clarice Mendoza-Davis and happy to begin with you this evening. I currently serve as the Chief Executive Officer at the Maya Angelou Schools. I'm joined by several of my colleagues, and as they turn their panels on, I'll go ahead and introduce them in the interest of time. We're joined by our Chief of Wellbeing, Dr. Kamal Wright-Cunningham, by Serena Lewis, our Academic Dean at our high school campus. I'm trying to see if there are others. I think that's it from by Principal Chantel Wright-Cunningham of our high school campus. And I think here comes Natalie Elder-Salas, analyst from our performance management and accountability team. And our chief of schools should be on shortly, Azalea Hunt-Spate. I'll go ahead and start with my presentation this evening, and Azalea will join shortly. So again, thanks for welcoming us here and for your consideration of our proposal, which has two parts. The first part that I'll address is our mission. And so since we last had our discussion a month ago, we did reconnect with PCSB staff. And after that reconnection, we submitted an addendum to our amendment proposal, which I know all of you have had access to. So I'll just make sure that I am clear this evening about one, the concerns or reservations that you shared with us, the feedback you shared with us. And I want to highlight in my brief presentation over the next few minutes our response in addressing those concerns and that feedback. So first, as it relates to our refreshed mission, next Monday, we start year 27 of service, and in commemoration of celebrating so many years serving the DC community, its children, its young people, and its families, we thought it was appropriate to refresh our mission. We very clearly heard your feedback that our refreshed mission, as we had originally submitted it, sort of signaled that maybe not all students and families are welcome at the Maya Angelou Public Charter Schools, which is certainly the opposite. We exist to serve all students and families that enter our doors. And we already do this in practice, and we know that we want our mission to align with our actions and our service in our schools. So as such, we adjusted our proposed mission statement to explicitly call this out. And so I'll just read you the first part. Maya empowers all students, including opportunity and justice-involved youth, to transform the trajectory of their lives. So a little bit of wordsmithing, but wordsmithing that we feel very clearly signals to any students and families interested in Maya as an option that they are more than welcome on all of our campuses. The second part of our amendment proposal focused on a pilot hybrid intervention program. And like I said, we really appreciate the discussion and feedback that you shared with us last month regarding our initial proposal. We heard very clearly your concerns about using our proposed program here as a discipline tactic that excluded students from school, as well as allowing parents and students to simply request virtual instruction. I think as Vice Chair Sandman put it, that part of the proposal sounded kind of like the Wild Wild West. So clearly heard and received. As a result of your feedback, we've made several key adjustments. First, I think, and most importantly, we want to reframe our ask and our proposal here. we're asking for your support in implementing a pilot intervention program for a very small subset of students with very unique educational needs. The goal, our first big goal, is to stay connected to this particular group of scholars so we can keep them on track to meeting their academic goals and in turn on track to graduation. So in many ways, while we sort of originally shared this is an extension of our virtual program, this really is both an attendance and academic intervention. For this subset of students, the alternative to entering into this intervention at our Maya High School campus would likely be chronic absenteeism, truancy, and even disconnection from school altogether. And so we strongly believe that through this pilot, this is really what we're seeking to prevent. This pilot is a preventative measure. I think it's also important to note that our proposed intervention program that's before you is the entirety of the Maya educational wraparound service model. It's just the mode of delivery that's different and more flexible to meet this particular group of students' needs. The program before you is hybrid in nature and includes both virtual and in-person instruction and all of the holistic Maya supports that are part of our service model, additional academic intervention, mental health and wellness supports, post-secondary supports, physical wellness and nutrition supports, specialized instruction and supports for our exceptional learners, and even participation in school-wide events like our weekly town halls and our award ceremonies. The bottom line is we want our scholars, even while they're in this intervention program temporarily, to remain part of and included in the school community as much as possible. We heard clearly, too, that we needed to get more specific with the criteria for this intervention program. And so we sharpened the criteria, and I just want to highlight the 3 points that we've chosen to focus on, 3 criteria points for students to be considered eligible for the pilot program that's before you. 1, this would be students who believe they are under persistent threat of violence from classmates while attending school. 2, this would be for students who commit an offense that would normally result in permanent expulsion, but for whom the school believes virtual learning at the moment is a better alternative to expulsion. And then 3, students who have threatened violence towards other classmates, school staff, or the entire school building, and for whom the school is investigating and attempting to mediate these threats. So we sharpened the criteria, made it very, very specific. I also want to highlight in response to your feedback that we really tightened up our internal SOPs, standard operating procedures for this pilot, so that our school team, Principal Wright Cunningham and team, operate with maximum discretion for students whose needs warrant this level of intensive intervention, including final review and approval from Azalea Hunt-Spate, who's our chief of schools. We want to note, too, that as part of the process implementation, when you're a student in this intervention, you receive an individual learning plan, daily live progress check-ins in addition to your instruction and wraparound services, and a revisiting of overall academic progress and any changes in circumstances related to safety, conflicts, etc., every 2 weeks. And we feel like based on this progress monitoring, we'll be able to accomplish our second goal, which Melody highlighted earlier in the introduction, which is to have the student succeed while they're temporarily in this pilot intervention and then move back into in-seat attendance full-time on campus, whether they entered the intervention due to safety or as an alternative to expulsion. We want them back with us on campus full-time. That is the end goal, and we wanted to make sure that was crystal clear, and we made that part of the addendum that we submitted to all of you. I think, with our ask reframed here against the backdrop of the city's broader prioritization of truancy and student safety, it's worth noting that re-engagement at school has always been one of Maya's goals, so much so that it is actually one of our charter goals and one that we have consistently met or exceeded year over year. Because this is a pilot, we'll definitely be collecting data on its efficacy and determining what adjustments we need to make so that all students in this particular intervention program succeed. And of course, we would love to share more with PCSB staff and with PCSB board members about the pilot's efficacy when the time is right. And we really hope in closing that these particular changes make our proposal, our goals, and our intentions in service to our Maya scholars much more clear than they were last time. And we are happy to answer any additional questions you have or hear any other feedback you have this evening. Thank you.
you, Dr. Mendoza Davis, for this presentation, for coming back to us. We have a couple questions from board members. We're going to begin with Treasurer Wright.
Hi, Maya team.
Hi.
So, you know, Chantel, every time I see you, every time they call you out, when they say your name, I'm just like, I'm not running a school. That's not me. So it always throws me off. But good evening. I just wanted to, you actually answered, which I should have known in some of your presentation that you all would do. I want to first just acknowledge your response to feedback and hearing what the board said, the concerns that we have, and the real work that you did. And a huge shout out to the staff as well, because I know they worked very closely with you to help you think this through, to address the issues that the board has seen. And I think this is a perfect example of a strong relationship working through and with your authorizer to get to the issues and the concerns that are in front of you. I do want to just underscore, which is what I was going to ask, is the request to make sure that you are tracking data and sharing that with PCSB, and not just solely for the fact of the pilot of how it works for you, but knowing what's going on in the city and knowing some of the things that we are seeing. Is this a potential for Maya to serve as an exemplar for how we can support in some of our more difficult situations? I completely understand you all have a different model and a different accountability framework, et cetera, but I think the data that you will collect from this pilot will be very helpful, even if that data is to say that it's not working and you should not continue it. And I want you to be open to both. Because I know you're going in with the best of intentions, but I want us to also be clear that this is in many ways unique to some of the scenarios that you all see on a regular basis, and could serve as an example, or it can also serve as an example like what not to do. So just watching that data and letting us know and staying in that same, I know the staff will do its job of working with you to do it, but also just ask that you will be in constant communication with us around this matter. So thank you for coming back tonight and also withstanding this long meeting. And I appreciate the work you did to be responsive to the board's feedback.
Thank you.
Treasurer Wright. Next, board member Stanley Beatty.
Thank you, Chair Cruzy. I just have a quick question for the Maya team, and I echo Treasurer Wright's sentiments. Thank you for being responsive to the remarks and the comments that you heard from our last meeting. Just refresh my memory with regards to engaging into the virtual programming. Does that come from at the student's request, or does that come at some sort of prompting or engagement from staff or administration? I know we talked about this in the last meeting, but just refresh my memory.
It could come from either. Either could be an initiation to be considered, Ms. Beatty, for entrance into like the intervention program. So I think we had outlined in our memo that the team of adults, it's sort of akin to a multidisciplinary team, right? So it's the school team teaming up with the parents, and in our case, because of our students' age, the scholars themselves, to say, here are the circumstances, here are the situation at hand. Let's consider this pilot intervention could be a good way to address your specific educational and learning needs at the moment. So let's move forward with the process, approval, application approval all the way up through Chief Spate. And then again, we really tried to we're not every 2 weeks, right? We're revisiting because things can change, conflicts can resolve, and all sorts of circumstances can change, and we want to be nimble and responsive, right? So if you only had to be in the intervention for 2 or 3 weeks and then you can come back to school, then that's ideal. But to answer your initial question, could be initiated sort of by either party, if you will.
Perfect. And thank you for clarifying at the end the way you did as well. And just because someone engages in the programming initially doesn't mean that they have to stay there for the full year. There's monitoring and evaluation of the program that allows you all to be flexible depending on the scholar's particular situation and how things change. So thank you for highlighting that.
Sure.
That's it for me, Chair Cruzy.
Thank you, Board Member Stanley Beatty. Vice Chair Sandman.
The changes you've made are completely responsive to the concerns I expressed at the prior meeting. Thank you for your responsiveness.
Thank you, Mr. Salmon.
Make a motion to approve the charter amendment request of Maya Angelou Public Charter School and approve the DC PCSB board chair to sign the amendment on the board's behalf.
I second.
Thank you. Secretary Adamathanian, I believe you still have proxy.
Yes.
That's great. Thank you. Would you initiate a roll call vote?
Yes. Chairwoman Cruzy.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Salmon.
Aye.
Treasurer Wright.
Aye.
Board Member Stanley Beatty.
Aye.
Board Member Davis.
Aye. Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez. Proxy vote was an aye, and I am an aye as well.
Congratulations and thank you, Maya School Community.
Good job, Maya team.
Congrats, Maya team.
Thank you. We'll be in
Thank you.
touch with our updates and lessons learned to be continued. Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate the
you.
support.
Have a
Thank you.
good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Okay, board members, next we will vote on the consent calendar. Would any board member like to remove an item from the calendar for further discussion or state a recusal for the record?
Chairwoman Cruzy, based on the proxy that Board Member Rodriguez sent, he would like to recuse himself from the consent calendar vote.
One or the other. Okay. Thank you. Other than Board Member Rodriguez, if there are no further, then I will entertain a motion on the consent calendar.
I move to approve all items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Noting the proxy, Secretary Adamathanian, would you proceed with the vote, please?
All right. Chairwoman Cruzy.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Salmon.
Aye.
Treasurer Wright.
Aye.
Board Member Stanley Beatty.
Aye.
Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez has recused himself, and I am an aye.
6 aye. Is there any new business? Then I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the August 19, 2024 board meeting.
I second. Oh.
Was competition for that one. Secretary Adamathanian.
Yes, there was. Here we go. Chairwoman Cruzy. Vice Chairman Salmon.
Aye.
Treasurer Wright.
Aye.
Board Member Stanley Beatty.
Aye.
Board Member Davis.
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez voted aye by proxy, and I am an aye.
Thank you, everyone.